Everyone hear me okay? Hello, good morning. It is 9:01, and I would like to call the Board of Psychology meeting to order and ask that Ms. Pruteau please call the roll. Sorry, you're way back there.
The middle.
The middle with the face. The middle with the face.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Kasuga,
Here.
Cervantes,
Here.
Fu, Harp Sheets,
Here.
Nystrom,
Here.
Riscate,
Here.
Phillips,
Here.
Rogers,
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Sorry, I don't have my list here, so I'm going from memory.
Not a problem. I know that Mr. Fu is in transit. Thank you, Ms. Pruteau. Quorum is established. Thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. I'm Leah Tate and the president of the Board of Psychology. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the May 10th meeting here in Los Angeles. And I have a few items to share before we dive right into our agenda. Regarding restrooms, they're out and to the right. Keep going right. Also, you will notice that board members are on computers, and that is because all of our board materials are on the computer, so you will see us referencing that throughout the entire meeting today. Continuing professional development credit will be available for attending the meeting today, and I'm going to give our new CPD coordinator, Ms. Sarah Pruteau, a few moments to tell us how to document that properly.
Thank you. Attending today's board meeting provides you with CPD credit under Category 1, attendance at a California Board of Psychology meeting. For your CPD records, please notate today's date as May 10th, 2024, and note that we are here for the board meeting. At the end of the meeting, I will announce how many hours you can be credited. To receive meeting attendance credit, physical presence at the meeting in person is required. For 2024, board meetings will be held in person, physical, excuse me. For 2024, board meetings will be held in person and physical attendance will be required for credit. Committee meetings will be held via WebEx. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are headed right into Dr. Rogers' mindfulness exercise. Dr. Rogers, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Good morning, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you. I'm always so thankful to Dr. Kasuga, who requests that I do these mindfulness practices before we start each meeting, so thank you for that. Before I get into the mindfulness practice today, I don't think I've ever asked this question, but I'm just curious for those in the room, how many folks have a mindfulness or meditation practice? Okay. Oh, warms my heart. Okay. So if you're new to mindfulness, welcome. And for those of you who have a practice, this is your practice for today. I did a little practice this morning, so I'm feeling pretty grounded. I always try to think about what would be helpful in offering practices at each meeting, and what I've been focusing on lately is this practice of gratitude. I don't think we've done a gratitude practice. There are so many challenges in the world today, so many requirements, so many responsibilities, so many directions we're pulled in, and I don't think we stop often enough to have gratitude for, the things that we might ordinarily or otherwise overlook. So I thought we would start today by offering a bit of gratitude and see if it helps to open the heart a little bit. So in order to prepare for this practice, I'm going to ask that if you have anything in your lap, that you set it aside so we can do a practice. There will be just a tiny bit of movement, not much. Don't worry, Dr. Phillips, it's not going to be too crazy. Okay. All right, so find a comfortable position for yourselves after you take a swig of your Diet Coke, Dr. Phillips. And I'll set my timer. At the end of the practice, I'll ring a bell 3 times just to let you know that the practice has concluded. So finding a position that is comfortable and supportive for your practice. If feeling free to close your eyes or gently lower the gaze. And for a few moments, let's just arrive. Let's just bring ourselves into this room, into this moment, into the here and now. There were lots of things we had to take care of this morning to get us to this moment. And there are lots of things that await us on the other side of this moment and this meeting. But for now, let our minds and hearts be where our bodies are also. And centering our attention on the breath. The inhale and the exhale. The rise and fall of the chest and the belly. And feeling our feet planted on the earth beneath us. And centering our heart on the quality of gratitude and what that means for you. What is it that we give thanks for? And so for the next few moments, I'll invite you to do a few small movements. And the first movement is just taking your arms and stretching them down and outward, palms facing down toward the earth. And in this moment, thinking about the things that you're grateful for that come from the earth. It could be the support that's offered to us from the earth, a place to walk, run, rest, thinking about the fruits and vegetables that grow from the earth, plants, trees, shrubs, animal life. Water, the beach, the ocean, lakes, ponds, streams, meadows. Beautiful flowers. And just taking a moment to draw in the positive energy that the earth affords us at all times. Offering a bit of thanks to the earth for the ways in which it supports us. And now I invite you to stretch your arms above your head, facing the sky. And thinking about all of the things above us that we might be grateful for. This can include the sun and the warmth it provides, the moon, wind, rain, clouds, stars above, the solar system, our galaxy, the entirety of the universe, this great mystery that we belong to. that we belong to something much bigger than ourselves. I think we often forget that. So just offering a bit of gratitude for what's below and what's above. And the next movement is stretching our hands to our sides, outstretched. And in this moment, I invite you to offer a bit of gratitude for the sense of belonging and community. Where are the spaces you belong? Where are the places you feel connected? In this moment, I'm grateful for my fellow board members, board staff, and all of you gathered here today. Where do you feel connection? Where do you find safety? Perhaps it's work, friendships, family relationships. Wherever it is, just offering a bit of gratitude for the spaces where connection is available to you. And for the last piece of this gratitude practice, I invite you to place a hand on the heart and a hand on the belly. Offering yourself a bit of gratitude. What are the things that you are grateful for yourself? Is it a particular quality, attribute? Maybe you're thankful to your body for having survived a chronic illness, or the fact that your body is breathing and alive today. Just offering yourself a bit of gratitude. And returning the attention back to the breath. Back to this body. And back to this present moment. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and bring your attention back into the room. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rogers. As always, we enjoy starting our meetings with your mindfulness practice. I saw a lot of bodies come in during our mindfulness, so this is just a reminder, restrooms are out our door and to the right. And another reminder, all of us are on computers. All of our board materials are on the computer, so we aren't texting and tweeting and on Facebook. We're referencing the board materials. So I would like to open up public comment for the president's welcome. Any public comment? If so, please come forward and have a seat. Thank you. Any board comment on the president's welcome? Thank you. We're going to move to agenda item number 3. This is public comment for items not on the agenda. Sorry, let me get this situated better for me. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Before I invite speakers to come forward for public comment, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss the specifics, including names, as to pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. The board may not discuss or take action at this time, and although this may give the impression we are not being responsive, these procedures are critical to ensure the compliance with the Open Meetings Act and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. In addition, if there is a speaker before you who expresses thoughts that are very, very similar to yours, please feel free to verbally agree with previous speakers instead of repeating the exact same comment. If there are any individuals who'd like to speak during this period, can you just raise your hand? Okay.
Dr. Tate, I have a question.
Oh, okay. Do you want to come forward and ask the question in the speaker, please? Wait. You got to press the middle button. We got to get you on the record here.
It's just a procedural question.
Please go ahead.
If I have a comment about, say, the Enforcement Division, and does it come under that even if the comment is unrelated to what's on the agenda about the Enforcement Division?
So the enforcement report is on the agenda, so I
Right.
would hold this comment to the enforcement time.
Great, no matter what it has to do with in the
Well,
enforcement.
it's related to enforcement.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Perfect. Any other public comment? If so, please come forward and have a seat. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4. This is the discussion and possible approval of the board meeting minutes from February 29th through March 1st, 2024. I'm opening it for board comment at this time.
Move it with any amendments for technical reasons.
Okay, and I should note that Mr. Fu has stepped in the room.
My motion reflects that presence. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. I have a motion and a second. I'm going to go to public comment. Any public comment on agenda item number 4? This is approval of the board meeting minutes from February 29th through March 1st, 2024. If you do have a comment, please come forward. Seeing no public comment. Oh, Dr. Phillips. Press the middle button. Yep.
I have one minor comment. It's at, my computer's not my friend today.
Join the club.
It's at line 511. The last word says complains. I think it should be complaints. That's my only comment.
I will take care of that.
Okay. I just want to make sure someone got that. Any other board comment? Thank you. Ms. Pruteau, can you please call the roll?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes. Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to the president's report. This is agenda item number 5. All of the upcoming board meetings and committee meetings are listed in the board packet. Just for the group here, our next full board meeting is scheduled as an in-person meeting August 16th, 2024, and this will be in the Bay Area. And I do not think we have a destination confirmed yet, or do we? No. Okay, Bay Area, August 16th. Any board comment? Oh, Mr. Fu.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just want to ask the question. One of the things that we had tried to do in the past was to make sure that we're holding meetings in places that are community-centered. And I recall we had an earlier session at San Francisco International, and I would be curious if Wright Institute would be a potential venue for such a board meeting so that it's connected to the communities that we're trying to serve. And
Hi. So we are in talks with the Wright Institute and looking to get that place locked in for the August board meeting, although we do not have a current contract or anything at this point.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney. Any public comment for the president's welcome? Please come forward and have a seat. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 6 is the Executive Officer's Report. Ms. Sorick.
Good morning, everyone. Included in your meeting materials is the Executive Officer's Report. I am happy to announce that we have filled the Continuing Professional Development Coordinator position with Ms. Pruteau, who's here today. She's been with the program for 6 years, has done renewals, and board liaison work for the board, so we are excited to have her in this new capacity. And then Ms. Chung will be talking about our exam coordinator position later, which was also recently, very recently, filled with one of our licensing analysts. So we are excited about that, to do some internal promotions, and we hope to also backfill the enforcement analyst position in the enforcement unit, as well as the limited term half-time licensing analyst position. So that is the update, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. Any board comments or questions regarding the Executive Officer's Report? Any public comment regarding the Executive Officer's Report? Please come forward and have a seat. We do not see any movement. So we will move on to agenda item number 7. This is the DCA budget. We will welcome Ms. Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. Hello and welcome.
Able to hear me? Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday and happy May. Happy to be here. My name is Yvonne Durantes. I am the Assistant Deputy Director with Board and Bureau Relations with DCA, here to provide you with an update. If there's anything that you need me to repeat, I'm happy to repeat any questions, happy to answer at any point. And also, a lot of the information I will be covering will also be included in either our spring newsletter or our monthly BBR email as well. So thank you for having me. I'm going to jump right in. And so in terms of Public Service Recognition Week, May 5th through 11th is Public Service Recognition Week at DCA. And DCA joins in honoring more than 3,000 DCA Board and Bureau employees dedicated to protecting consumer protection. And so on behalf of DCA, I want to thank all employees and board members for your service and contribution to consumer protection. So thank you all. Moving on to our meet and greet with Secretary Moss. On April 30th, DCA hosted an in-person meeting with Secretary Tamika Moss and executive leaders. It served as an opportunity for DCA leaders to meet our new secretary and hear her vision and priorities for the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and the department itself. DCA has learned of a recent increase in scams targeting licensees. Though the nature of the scams varies, they are similar in that they involve individuals falsely identifying themselves as board employees and telling the licensees that they are under investigation. The scammers attempt to gather personal or financial information and may even demand payment. Boards are urged to be vigilant and proactive in providing licensees with tips to avoid these scams. Moving on to our DEI update. On April 5th, DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting. The committee reviewed and discussed the member application process, establishing subcommittees, and solicited input from the committee on how to expand language access, workforce development, and advance DEI in the remaining of 2024. The next committee meeting will be held on July 26, 2024. And if you do have any questions or ideas, or you'd like the committee to consider anything additionally, please let your executive officer or DCA staff know as well. As a reminder, DCA's learning management system has many DEI-related training courses available. Board members are encouraged to participate in available trainings and continue to grow in our DEI efforts. And if you do have any questions in regard to your login information or password reset for the learning management system, I'm happy to assist with that. So please let me know if you do have any issues with that. Moving on to an outreach update. Last month, DCA's Office of Public Affairs staff participated in 2 Facebook Live events hosted by the Consulate of Mexico's Sacramento and Fresno offices during its Financial Education Week. Staff presented Get to Know DCA in Spanish and shared a broad overview of consumer and licensing information. In addition, DCA joined an in-person resource event with the Consulate of Mexico in Sacramento. Another Get to Know DCA event will be held with the Consulate of Mexico in San Bernardino on May 14th. The consulates have expressed interest in future event partnerships to share more licensing and consumer resources. Additionally, in the coming months, DCA will be developing workforce development outreach opportunities for all boards and bureaus to participate in, and I look forward to sharing more information on that. Looking ahead in terms of travel expense claims. So as the fiscal year comes to an end, please submit your travel expense claims as soon as possible and no later than Wednesday, June 7th. Claims submitted after this date will still be processed. However, the state controller's office will not issue payments until after July 5th. All travel expenses and advances submitted for travel on or after July 1st will be processed for payment until after the budget is signed. For questions regarding travel, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. As a reminder, board members must complete the board member orientation training within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment, and the next BMOT will be offered virtually on June 18th, and it will be a full day of training, and it will also be offered again October 22nd. And so registration is currently open for those dates, and it is also via LMS. So if you do have any questions in regard to whether you still need to meet this requirement or not, feel free to ask me. And lastly, we just want to thank you for submitting your Form 700. We have reached near 100% compliance, and so it's all thanks to you guys submitting them, so thank you. And I just want to take an opportunity to thank you again for your service. This week we've been highlighting public service within DCA, and I think always at the core of DCA is public members and you public servants protecting Californians. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Antes. I actually do have a comment. Early on, you were talking about a scam that was targeting licensees, and you encouraged the board to put out information on how to protect our licensees.
Yeah.
Does DCA have a flyer, an informational, some guidance to provide to our executive
we have
officer?
language that you're able to use if you want to post on your website, if you want to send out to your listserv. Happy to provide that.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah. of
Thank you.
course.
Any other board comment from Ms. Durantes? Oh, Dr. Cervantes.
Thank you for being here this morning. I just wanted to take an opportunity, because you're here, and because we're meeting at a remote venue, how important it is that we as board members have the tools to be able to properly serve. We've had a lot of challenges internally with logistics regarding our new computers, and some of it's beyond our team here, and it's about DCA process and for data technology and those types of things. I urge DCA to take board member input and consider how that affects us and our staff in getting us situated. There is like a small army of people helping me with my computer, my state computer, and it has the amount of time we've all spent on this has been pretty extraordinary, and it's not conducive to us being productive in doing our work on behalf of Californians. So I just want to take the opportunity to say that publicly.
Well, thank you. And, you know, we're always happy to help with streamlining anything that is necessary. So please always feel free to reach out if there are any issues at all. Thank you.
Any other board comment? Thank you. I'd like to open this topic up for public comment. Does anyone have a public comment for Ms. Durantes? Please come forward, have a seat. I do not see any movement. Thank you, Ms. Durantes. We appreciate the information. Moving on to agenda item number 8. This is the budget update. And Mr. Polk, please. Oh, he was hiding way back there. He just popped out of nowhere.
Good morning. Everyone hear me okay? Okay. Included in the meeting materials is the budget reports regarding the board's revenue and expenditures. These reports were completed by the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office, and they were provided by them as well. And the reports reflect that as of fiscal month 9, the board projects collecting $7.58 million in revenue during the current fiscal year of 23-24. As for expenditures for 23-24, based on the same fiscal month, the board is projected to spend approximately $8.331 million of its budgeted appropriation of $8.481 million, leaving a balance of approximately $149,000. At this time, board staff is continuing to monitor the revenue and expenditure with the budget office on a monthly basis. And that includes my report for the budget report, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Any board comment regarding the budget report? Thank you, Mr. Fu. I knew you were going to jump in.
I love a good budget conversation. Mr. Polk, this is more of a comment than an actual question, which is the May revision is coming out later today. And it would be helpful if we received an update at some future point if there'll be a need for the board to provide a general fund loan or a loan to the general fund from our special fund, and the implications as we continue to recover from the fiscal position that we were in last 2 fiscal years with the different revenue takes that we've had. So I know that it's hard to predict what's going to be in the May revision, and so recognizing the timing of that, just would appreciate that update. Thank you.
As always, thank you, Mr. Fu, on your budget comments. Any other board comments for Mr. Polk? I'd like to open this item up for public comment. Any public, please come forward, have a seat. Mr. Polk is available to answer questions. Thank you, Mr. Polk.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9 is the enforcement report, and standing in for Ms. Monterrubio today is Ms. Sorick.
Sorry, I'm trying to get into my network here. Must be a technical issue day. Anyhow, I am providing the enforcement report today. And included in your meeting materials is the latest on complaint program and citation program data. As I mentioned earlier, we are looking to backfill our enforcement analyst position that was vacated by Ms. Castleberry. We did offer the position to a candidate, but she took a position with another state agency. So we are looking to conduct interviews next week and hope to have a candidate in place within the next couple of months. We are also looking to recruit additional subject matter experts. We have a plethora of individuals in the audience, so I would encourage you to look online if you are interested in what it's like to be an enforcement expert. It's a really valuable service you can provide. You get continuing professional development for the time, and it's very important work. So I will put that plug in for our expert program. Additionally, we have our performance measures and the overview of enforcement activity included. And I'm available for any questions I can ask, and for those I can't answer, I will bring those back to the office and we'll have Ms. Monterrubio follow up.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. Oh, Dr. Rogers, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick, for your presentation. I just have a, excuse me, a question about the performance measures in the board packet on pages 31 and 32. On page 31, it's performance measure number 4, and then on pages 32 and 33, it jumps to performance measures 7 and 8. I was wondering if you know what performance measures 5 and 6 might be. So I think I saw that in the board packet from the last meeting too, and wasn't sure. Any thoughts?
I apologize, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll have to get back to you on
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any other board comment? Dr. Kasuga.
Ms. Sorick, just want to ask about the expert reviewer program. It says here that we have received 25 new expert applications. How many of those end up becoming new experts, or are there ones that don't pass or don't qualify for our program?
I'm happy that I can actually answer this one. Actually, of those 26 applications that we received, 5 of those, is my understanding, did not qualify. And they were for mostly, for example, they hadn't been practicing for long enough, so they didn't meet those guidelines, but we do have a good number now to add to the existing pool of experts. Our goal ideally would be to have 100 experts in the pool, and then that way we're not relying on a small group to review a number of cases. We can more evenly spread the work. So hopefully we get additional people that are interested, maybe someone in the room today, and that would be great.
So we're a little bit over half of that 100 goal that we're aiming for, 36 plus 20-ish, right?
Yes, that would be great. I mean, if we get to that and people follow through and do the training, and that would be ideal.
Are there specific specializations of experts that we are hoping to add to our pool?
That I would have to get back to you on. I know the complaint areas sometimes fluctuate between the violation areas. I know in the past we needed child custody evaluator expertise, but I'm looking to Dr. Phillips if you remembered the last conversations on experts, what the areas were.
The one that stands out to me is child custody evaluators. But I think in general, we're pretty thin on the ground for a variety of different areas. So no matter what your expertise, we encourage you to apply.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. And I just wanted to echo that important announcement of really considering applying for our expert review program. It's a way to really help bolster the field, because I know we all care about the quality of practitioners out there. And personally, for me, I do assessments, and whenever I read a bad assessment or like hear about practitioner who's not up to par, it really makes my blood boil. So, it's a way to kind of like make sure that we are keeping the profession standards high, and that's a service that I encourage everyone to consider. It's a way to, lend our expertise to make sure that our field is as robust and as high of a standard as we want it to be for the protection of Californians.
Dr. Herb Sheets?
And Ms. Sorick, could you read the qualifications to apply to be a board expert? Do you have them with you?
I wish I could access the internet right now.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I'm on my desktop only right now, but they are available on our website. There's a section on getting involved with the board, and if any board staff happens to have internet access available and could come up and speak to that, I would appreciate any board staff. I'm looking in the back of the room, board staff.
I remember reading, clicking on it recently, and it said that you had to have so many years of forensic experience. Is that, like, maybe Dr. Phillips remembers that? Is that required? That somebody has to demonstrate that they have had a specialty in forensic practice?
No, that's not required. But it is helpful to have forensic experience, but it's not required in order to be a reviewer, for instance. But usually for people that are going to be witnesses in board proceedings, we prefer that they have prior experience with the legal system.
Hi, is it on? Okay. So I found the application. So it is like a long list. So I'm just gonna kind of summarize. So of course it is asking for the applicants, the expert reviewer, to have a valid license issued by the board for at least 3 consecutive years prior to submitting the application, have an active practice, which is defined as at least 80 hours per month, consisting of direct client services, clinical activities, psychometric testing, supervision, and or teaching. Have 3 or more years of expertise in specific areas of practice, and then have forensic experience in legal proceedings, in parentheses, preferred. And then they will complete an application identifying their top areas of expertise and relevant experience, and sign a statement under penalty of perjury attesting to the application's truthfulness. And then they will be submitting a curriculum vitae, talking about their training, education, relevant experience, and current work setting. And then they will have asked to provide some writing samples relevant to their experience or publications or redacted evaluation. And then we ask that they have no prior or current charges or formal disciplinary actions related to any license, registration, certificate, or credential to practice psychology or any other profession or occupation in any state in the U.S. or foreign country. And then no criminal convictions. And then they're required to complete the expert training workshop in person and agree to attend subsequent biannual training to remain a qualified expert. And then they're required to agree to testify when necessary, and then agree that the term will be 3 years in length, and then have a working understanding of the law and regs related to the practice of psychology.
Mr. Fu?
Thank you, Ms. Chung, for that. And I just would like to add that there's training that comes involved with it. And so when there's the readout that there's an expectation of all those different things, there's a wonderful process, a wonderful training that comes along with it to make sure that folks are supported through the entire endeavor.
And just like one more follow-up question, Ms. Sorik. How long is the process from application to becoming an expert, including, I guess, or maybe excluding the training, because I know that the training comes, several times throughout the year, so it's not often.
We actually only offer the training, I believe it's once a year or once every other year, depending on the availability of the Attorney General's office. We try to hold those in Northern California or Southern California, depending on where the experts are. I know we've done that in the past where we've done different offerings in different areas of the state. Because of the travel restrictions, it may be more of a Northern California offering, so that the staff isn't doing as much travel. It really all depends on when the person applies and when the training is offered. But once the training is completed, then they can start being assigned cases. So it really, but the answer kind of varies. And we did also start doing a refresher offering once a year. And this is an opportunity for people that have completed the training, but maybe there's some trouble spots that have come up. And we offer, for continuing professional development, some refresher training just so that people have continuous support. And they don't just get training once and then the 3 years is up and then they don't have any more follow-up from the program. So that's something we just started offering as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sorik. I really appreciate that. I also wanted to bring in a couple of stories that I've experienced from people that have applied to the program, and they said that they've submitted applications, but they haven't heard from the board about their application. And I understand that we're short-staffed, but I would just wanted to put it out there that there have been a couple of instances where there wasn't any response about their application, and it might be better to make sure that we're responding in a timely manner to applicants, irregardless of when the next training is happening. That way it can...
I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
It can increase the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment regarding the enforcement report? Mr. Fu?
Just on, I think, Dr. Rogers' question about performance measures, it seems like performance measures 5 and 6 have never been reported out as far back as 2014. And the enforcement performance measures, as governed by DCA's Office of Data, actually doesn't list performance measures 5 and 6 and only measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8. So it seems like that is something that's a performance measure that, but unless Executive Officer Sorik has more context to that. As you can tell, I have internet access and I've been busy looking into it too.
According to Dr. Monterrubio, there is no 5 and 6. So there you go. Yes.
Oh, I have one more question.
Go ahead, Dr. Harpsheets.
Okay, so just to follow up, when Ms. Chung was reading the list of qualifications, it did say something about forensic, but I didn't quite get it all. Would somebody be eliminated if they didn't have a forensic practice? I can see Dr. Phillips give me a look.
The answer is no.
They would not be
They
eliminated.
would not be eliminated.
So I just want people to not feel.
There's two types of experts we use. One is reviewers, And then there's also people that testify at trial or at the administrative hearing. So we prefer that people have forensic experience if we're anticipating an administrative hearing.
Right. But it's
So it's
important.
preferred,
Yeah.
it's not required.
Okay, I just want people to realize that, if I read that and say, oh, well, I don't have a forensic practice, I won't apply. I think it's really important for people to see that, they could be a reviewer and they could still apply, that they're not eliminated. I don't know how we communicate that, but I think it's important.
It could even be a chance for them to have experience, because those experiences don't come by easily if they're interested, and they're gonna get training anyways. If they have the expertise and they can, do the reviews, and, maybe it's a way for them to get
Right.
forensic experience.
Yeah, just to expand the pool.
And in some areas of expertise, people have a lot of forensic experience. For instance, people that are used to doing child custody evaluations often find themselves in court. People that do assessments or neuropsychology often find themselves in court.
But there are those of us who don't.
No, but you're still welcome to apply when you get off the board, Mary.
You're on the list.
You could set a good example. Maybe we can get you to write an article about it.
And you're on the list too. So, Dr. Cervantes?
Now, this is what I wanted to say. Ms. Sorick, could we get like a flyer? We have a lot of content on this. We've worked on this issue, the issue of the experts over the years at different times. But it would be great if we had like a flyer, something simple that we could distribute, just make available at our meetings. And always have a reminder that people can go to the flyer, or because I notice we're also attracting new audiences to our meetings, which is the perfect audience on this particular point that we should take advantage of.
And I think in this past year, when we went to the CPA convention and the LA County Psychological Association convention, there were actually flyers or applications available at the board table. But it's a great idea to have them here as well.
And before I move on to public comment for this item, can I speak first and then you? Okay. We keep throwing around the word testify, and I know that's a super scary word for most psychologists, but the odds of actually testifying are fairly low. So I'm just putting that out there. So don't make that be the obstacle for not applying. Go ahead, Dr. Rogers.
Okay. Ms. Sorg, thank you so much. I have a follow-up question to one posed by Dr. Kasuga when she was mentioning that some colleagues had reached out about becoming experts. Do you happen to know if when people submit applications, if there is something that goes out that says, we received your application and there's a timeline, or does the application just get submitted and they wait for a response from the board?
I'll follow up on that, but an acknowledgement does make sense.
Sure.
And I know that right now in the enforcement unit, we are, down a staff person, so the workload is quite high.
Sure.
But I also want to be mindful of not losing people that might be interested in the process. So I'll make sure and follow up on an acknowledgement process.
Okay. I think that would be really helpful, especially since we talked about customer service at our strategic planning, just as a way of making sure we're in communication with people who are trying to become experts. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Phillips.
I just wanted to add that among the enforcement staff, and in particular the manager of enforcement, Ms. Monterrubio, that getting more experts is a very high priority. So I don't think this is something that typically sits around on a desk for a very long time. She's very motivated about it.
Any other board comment regarding the enforcement report? I'd like to open up this agenda item for public comment. If you have a comment regarding the enforcement report, please come forward and have a seat. And make sure you turn on the microphone. There's a button in the middle with a face on it.
Thank you. Simple question. At your website, do you have information about any aspects of being an expert that are compensated financially, or is this a strictly volunteer sort of position? It's very unclear as a new guest and visitor here. Thank you.
There is compensation. It may not be as much as the other side might have to offer in proceedings, but we do offer a compensation that is comparable to other healthcare board experts. So that is something that we do offer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Last year, a survey was conducted of SDPA, San Diego Psychological Association members, and their experiences with the Board of Psychology. One issue that came up among multiple respondents was feeling that the Board of Psychology was having to pull from a limited pool of expert reviewers, and today's agenda certainly confirms that active goal of the Enforcement Division to recruit more expert reviewers. I would like to put forward a recommendation to add the question of, would you consider being of service as an expert reviewer for the Board of Psychology on every psychologist license renewal? If a renewing psychologist indicates they were interested, they could be given the base eligibility criteria, and if, again, they indicated that that base eligibility criteria could that they met that, they could declare a brief specialty, and their name and email address could be given to the Enforcement Division for further vetting. Making this simple change could increase the expert reviewer pool, leading to even greater specificity of expertise and alignment between reviewers and assigned cases. One of the other issues that came up identified specifically from expert reviewers that we're currently serving or have in the past was multiple respondents indicated the great responsibility and weight of being an expert reviewer. One respondent indicated explicitly that he discontinued service as an expert reviewer due to the discomfort of the position without any ability to consult or collaborate on the technical, ethical, and idiosyncratic facets of the cases that he reviewed. While it is recognized that assigning 2 expert reviewers to review each case is economically unfeasible, I would like to emphasize the importance, if not necessity, for expert reviewers to be able to consult as needed on complex cases. While allowing for expert reviewers to seek consultation in complex cases will cost more initially, it is likely that the additional discussion and collaboration would give greater validity to case rulings, decrease the incidence of case contention, as well as in turn save money in legal defense costs. Thank you for your time and consideration in these matters.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dr. Andrea Davis. I would like to say I concur with those fabulous suggestions and with Dr. Harbsheet's suggestion that it be clarified that you could be a reviewer if you didn't, versus someone who must testify. I think that would be an easier entry point for most of us who have no forensic experience. And I also wanted to ask if there was a reconsideration of the possibilities for qualifying if you spend half time administering a mental health program or consulting in psychology, if that would also qualify if you spend some of your time with patient care, some of your time with supervision and teaching, and some of your time consulting and administering a psychology program. Thank you for your time this morning.
I could respond to that. We actually are considering adding a number of additional categories to broaden the number of people that would be available as experts.
I remember this discussion from the fall, and I just want to concur that that would be a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My comments are not about the expert reviewers, so if they want to discuss that now before I make a general comment, some other comments about enforcement, that would be fine.
No, please go ahead.
All right. Okay, what did I do here? Okay, I'm Dr. Janet Farrell from the San Diego Psychological Association, but I'm here today as a stakeholder independently. I attended the Board of Psychology's 5-year strategic planning session on December 7th, again as a stakeholder. A major goal identified for the 5-year plan was greater transparency in how the board operates. When licensing issues were the topic in the morning discussion, the board openly discussed how to address psychologists' concerns regarding the licensing process and wait times, even after many of those issues had already been addressed last year with the hiring of more licensing staff and streamlining of many procedures. The transparency and openness of everyone at that morning session was impressive to me as a stakeholder. Then in the afternoon portion of the board's strategic planning session, the atmosphere in the room, in my opinion, became less open when enforcement issues were discussed. Most of the suggestions made regarding the enforcement division were immediately dismissed. One suggestion was regarding the initial letter sent to a psychologist requesting information about a consumer complaint. The suggestion was that a statement be added to the letter informing the psychologist that they may want to consult legal counsel before responding to the board letter. There was an objection stating that the board cannot give legal advice. The board counsel countered, pointing out that the option of seeking legal counsel was not the same as giving legal advice, and that such a statement could legally be included in the letter. The board counsel then said that the suggestion would be put on the agenda of the next enforcement committee meeting. This sounded to me like a very reasonable next step. 5 months later, I have still seen no posting on the website of any enforcement committee meetings, although other board committees have publicly announced meetings during that time. Nor has there been any information available regarding whether the suggestion of adding that sentence to the letter to psychologists was ever addressed. It goes without saying that enforcement committee needs to close meetings whenever cases come up or confidential information is discussed. However, we're talking here about the policy portion of the enforcement committee meetings, which I would assume are public knowledge. So in closing, I have 2 requests of the board. Number 1, I would like to know whether the enforcement committee meetings regarding policies can be open to the public and posted on the Board of Psychology website, and if not, I would like to understand more about why not. And number 2, that the letter sent out by the board asking a psychologist to provide information regarding a consumer complaint contain an added sentence telling the psychologist that they have the option of seeking legal counsel before responding to the request. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Please go ahead.
I thank you for that public comment. I will tag team with Dr. Phillips on this one. Historically, the enforcement committee has not been an open public meeting because of the enforcement staff presence at those meetings and the ability to talk about case-specific scenarios with a committee of 2 members. However, any decision or recommendation that comes before the committee would come to the board for a full discussion. So there's always opportunity on any policy that would be made to change, to come before the board to be open and transparent, and an opportunity for public input. So I just want to let folks in the room know that even if there's a discussion that happens at the committee level, it would always be brought to the full board for discussion for board members and public to chime in and provide input and feedback.
Yeah, I'll just second that and mention that enforcement committee meetings are, I wouldn't say less formal, but they are less bound by some of the rules that allows the committee members to talk to enforcement staff about particular concerns. We're also concerned about protecting the confidentiality of the enforcement staff. You may not be aware of this, but being in public service or being an employee in public service often results in threats and other actions that are attempted. Within our own office, there's postings of pictures of people that we have to call security immediately about. So out of concern of the privacy and danger to enforcement staff, we keep those meetings closed.
The one other thing I'll add to this is that we are actually going to have a public stakeholder meeting this year of the Enforcement Committee, I believe.
No.
So, no, we are not. We're research psychoanalyst, apologies. I'm on two committees with Dr. Phillips and I get them confused. Okay, taking a step back though, just reemphasizing the policy decisions that have to come before the committee. Every decision, including the revision of, for example, the subject matter expert letter or clarifying the comment around forensic psychologists, that has to come before this board for adoption. So the process is transparent because any policy decision made here has to be done in a public setting. So I want to emphasize that point that Ms. Sorick said. And the second thing I'll just say about strategy is that strategy is about prioritization and sequencing. Doing everything at once is not strategic. Prioritization of the items at hand and then sequencing them in an effective manner, that's strategy. And I think one of the things that I know the Enforcement Committee will bring to the full board are some revisions to both code and to, or proposed changes to both the code and to our regulatory practices. And that will be a public discussion, and that policy discussion will be done publicly as well.
Ms. Sork, if you could make sure that Ms. Monterrubio has on the next Enforcement Committee agenda the line item relating to the issue that was brought up, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all the board comments. Again, hello, this regarding the enforcement report? Perfect. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman with the California Psychological Association. Thank you for considering all the public comments so far about the Enforcement Committee. And Dr. Phillips, I was going to say, if we could make sure thank you for making sure that suggestion about the letter, the initial inquiry letter, be considered, since it's not a public meeting, to make sure it's being considered. I would also ask that you consider, I believe that the initial letters say that they are informal, and in terms of increasing transparency, I think that it should be considered if in fact that is some of the language used, not only adding that people may want to consult an attorney, but that the term informal be removed. I don't really, I think that is misleading to some people in terms of the potential consequences that opening an inquiry can have for them. So if you could, I would ask that you would please also add that for consideration at the same time as following up on Dr. Farrell's comments about the about consulting an attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winkleman. And also just for everyone, I love the other suggestion about putting the expert reviewer. I don't know where you went, but that was a great comment. Oh, hello, thank you. So I would love that to be added to the discussion. Thank you. Any other public comment for the enforcement? Board members, can you please pull the microphone closer to your mouth? You might have to move the whole unit closer so everyone can hear you and it can be recorded. Okay, I'm gonna move. Oh, my little gavel is over here. I forgot. Perfect. Ms. Fruteau, can you please call the roll?
Kasuga,
Aye. Here.
Cervantes,
Aye.
Fu,
Aye.
Harp Sheets,
Here.
Nystrom. Here. Phillips,
Here.
Riscate. Here. Rogers,
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Roll is complete.
Thank you. Quorum is established. I'm just going to jump right back in. We are taking public comment for the enforcement report. If anyone has more to discuss, please step forward and have a seat. Yes?
Sorry. President Tate, I just wanted to add to the agenda, one of the things that the public comment, that came out of the public comment earlier about resources for experts in terms of, when cases are difficult. It seems like one expert has left being an expert because they felt like it was too difficult. So if we can put that in the agenda about resources for our experts in terms of consultation and other resources that we provide on top of the training.
Okay. I think Ms. Sorek has it for you.
Thank you so much.
I'll just briefly respond to that particular topic. There are problems that arise when you have an expert witness who's consulting with other people outside the process because of the integrity of the information that they're giving. So they're in a relatively unusual position. That doesn't mean there's not room for collaboration among the experts. I don't think that we can afford to have two experts on a case. Unless you want us to raise licensing fees even more, which I know you don't, because I don't want to pay more. But we'll have to discuss that general topic at enforcement. I think it's an interesting one.
Well, it sounds like enforcement has several things to discuss the next time
It
you
sure
meet.
does, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Any more public comment regarding enforcement? I do not see any movement. We are moving on to the licensing report. Ms. Chung, please.
Good morning, board members. As of April 19, 2024, we have 22,744 licensed psychologists, 1827 registered psychological associates, and 24 registered psychological testing technicians. It includes 20,549 current psychologists and 2192 psychologists who are in the inactive status. We also have one psychologist who is actively serving the military and permitted to provide psychological service in a military setting, and two others who are also actively serving the military but not permitted to provide psychological practice. And you may find more details in Attachment A, the licensing population report. This report provides a snapshot of the number of psychologists and psych associates in each status at the time the report was generated. And by comparing to the last report made at the February board meeting, the number of psychologists who hold a current license increased by 53, and the number of current psychological associates decreased by 37. Moving along to Attachment B, you will find the workload reports for psychologists, license, psychological associate registration, and registered psychological testing technicians applications from October 2023 through March 2024. For psychologists and psych associate applications, similar trend is observed when we do some comparison to the last report made at the February board meeting. The lesser volume in March allows us to work on and approve more complete applications, as you can see. Regarding applications and notifications received, show in Attachment C, the number of applications and notifications received provided for a 12-month period from April 2023 through March 2024. The total number we see here of all applications and notifications decreased a little bit by about 30, I would say. But the trend is comparable to the same 12-month period as reported in 2022-2023 years. And we're expecting an influx in the next few months, judging from the previous trend of where the influx of application coming in. Regarding average application processing timeframes, the board reviews and processes applications based on a first-come, first-served basis. This includes but not limited to all applications, supporting materials, and responses to application deficiencies. All these are reviewed according to the date they are received. And you can see a 6-month overview of the average processing timeframes in business days in attachment E. So for psychologist applications, we see that the average processing time frames fluctuate a little bit by a few business days since we reported out at the last board meeting. We continue to maintain an average of 12 business days in reviewing application or requested documents for psychologist applications if we're not doing better than that. For psychological associate registration, we also see a fluctuation by a few business days since our report at the February board meeting. We experienced an increased processing timeframes for processing deficient applications, but we were able to relocate resources to help maintain a reasonable timeframe with existing staff resources. As the licensing unit is not fully staffed yet, we continue to work with Office of Human Resources and hope to fill the temporary vacancy currently in the unit as soon as possible. And staff also anticipate a slight increase in processing timeframes of an additional 2 to 3 weeks beginning in May, just based on previous trend of incoming applications in the same months. And so it's recommended to individuals, if you're interested to apply for a registration or eligibility to take an examination, please do review for completeness of an application prior to submission, so to avoid any unnecessary processing delays. And we have some new informational resources created for application for licensure as psychologist to assist individuals who are interested to apply for examination eligibility for a psychologist licensure. Board staff developed 3 new checklists for the 3 steps in getting licensed as some additional information resources for our applicants. So these checklists are posted on the psychologist application page on the board website, and the links are also provided on the memo of this report. So if any interested parties, they could go click the links for a quick reference to take a look what they are. And regarding the checklist, I would like to thank licensing staff, Upper Management Council, and Dr. Harpsheets for their input and feedback regarding the content, and of course the department's Office of Publications Design and Editing staff to help us with designing the checklist, make this more aesthetically pleasing. And then I would also like to make one update about staffing. So I'm very happy to announce that we have filled our examinations coordinator position by Ms. Susan Hansen. She joined our board back in 2021 and was serving as the office technician in the Central Services Unit, helping out with file transfers and verification. And then she joined our licensing unit as a licensing analyst in April 2022, and then we're very excited to see her grow in her new role as examination coordinator for our board. And this concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions if you may have any. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Chung, and I'm so happy to see that you have an additional staff member on your team. That's amazing. Any other board comment for Ms. Chung? I'd like to open this up for public comment. If you have a comment for Ms. Chung regarding the licensing report, please come forward and have a seat. Thank you, Ms. Chung, but don't go far. We're moving on to agenda item 11, the examination report. Go ahead, Ms. Chung.
Thank you, Board President. Board members, please find the examination statistics from January to March 2024 provided on the memo. So for the E-Triple-P, I want to make a note, I'm sorry, that on the, we made a corrected version of the memo in the hand carry item, just in case you haven't, get that yet. So for the EPPP, the overall pass rate in 2024 so far is about 35%, and the overall pass rate amount candidates who took the exam for the first time is about 54. By comparing the pass rates to previous 4 years, we can see that the pass rates in 2024 so far are trending lower than previous years. For the complete, the overall pass rate for the first few months in 2024 is about 82%, and the overall pass rate for first-timers is almost 81%. And the complete pass rate is trending mostly consistent when compared to previous years. And then I would also like to make a comment about follow-up items from last board meeting. I believe Mr. Fu asked about the effect size of the ASPPB study, and then we have already followed up with them. So we will make sure to provide that information to the board members as soon as we receive it. So we will be following up on that. And then some might be interested about the have comments about the feasibility of a California practice exam. So I just want to give an update that we will be providing an update about this at the August board meeting. And that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions if you may have. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Chung. Any board Mr. Fu?
Ms. Chung, not to add more to your plate, but I'm curious how we're sitting relative to other jurisdictions with regard to the passage rates of the EPPP exam. And I'm just noticing the graph that you have in the report, and it's showing that 24 is lower. And I'm reflecting also on the presentation we had with the Office of Professional Examination Services that is also reporting just a larger trend downward. And so, I do know that this board takes its role in terms of conversing with other jurisdictions seriously, and I know our executive officer is in frequent contact with others. So I would be curious, maybe perhaps at the end of the year, recognizing that or maybe even January or the first quarter meeting of next year, once you have a full data set for a full year, just to better understand what the 24 passage rates were compared to previous years, and then getting any information that you might have from other jurisdictions if they're witnessing a similar trend. And the working hypothesis I have is, that is such an interesting and strange noise, is that the remote learning pieces that came in 2020 are in a bit full of effect at this point. That's probably a sign for me to stop talking. So, but I'm curious about the effect of remote learning and how that might be showing up in the passage rates of the examinations here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fu. Any other board comment regarding this item? I'd like to open up. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Svantes.
I just want to say that I share the sentiments of Mr. Fu. I think it'd be important for us to look at that as a follow-up to the discussions we've had, and to again also take advantage of the new audiences that we're engaging in our meetings, because I am going to guess that some of them have connection to training programs, and that's important information for them to be aware of. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Oh, Dr. Harpsheets, please.
Ms. Chung, remember when we had that report that Mr. Fu was referring to, and the person was able to break out testing performance from accredited versus non-accredited programs. I wonder if they would be able to break out online programs, because we're looking at remote learning, but that online programs are remote learning programs too, and if they could break that out further, it would be very interesting to know that.
Go ahead.
I was also going to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was also going to mention that ASPPB provides statistics by state, so
Exactly.
it actually is not that hard to compare passage rates between states by year. So that should be relatively easy to do without even having to tap into additional resources.
Well, that was actually something that I was wondering about, Mr. Fu, when you brought up your comment. I'm also concerned a little bit about the EPPP Part 2 coming out in January of 2026. So I'm actually curious to know what the passage rates are for states who have adopted that. Because if the passage rate is so low for Part 1, I don't have enough information to know what the Part 2 is looking like. So if there is any data about what that is looking like for states who have adopted it, just so we can be mindful of what the landscape is looking like as we approach January of 2026. Just to have a little awareness. Go ahead.
Building on Dr. Rogers' comment and question, help me understand, do we know if the states that have adopted the Part 2 exam, if I recall, that passage rate is probably for both Part 1 and Part 2? Like ASPPB, I think, is reporting out passage rates, one passage rate, because they're considering it one exam. So but to your point, Dr. Rogers, we might actually have to take those jurisdictions actually out of that comparison because we wouldn't be comparing the same exam. And I would be curious if ASPPB does at least provide jurisdictions the breakdown of the Part 1 and Part 2 side so that you might be able to get a better picture. But I hope this doesn't become a encyclopedia of passage rates. So I defer to you on what is best manageable.
Well, can I just add, I can't imagine, since they're taken at two very different times, the Part 1 and Part 2, I can't imagine that they wouldn't have that information, right? Yeah, should be available.
I'd like to open it up for public comment. Anyone who has a comment or question regarding this agenda item, please come forward and have a seat, please. Thank you, Ms. Chung. Thank you to the board for the robust and interesting discussion. Moving on to agenda item number 12, this is the continuing professional development and renewals report. Ms. Whitney.
Thank you and good morning. This report will highlight the renewals between January 2024 through March of 2024. During this timeframe, an average of 80% of psychologists renewed as active. The renewals are accounting for approximately 5% each month for retirements. Approximately 94% of psychologists and psychological associates have renewed their license online using Breeze. It should also be noted that the renewal numbers for January and February are trending different from what we normally see in these months. The data is incomplete, and we are researching additional data points with our IT department. We plan to provide complete data at the next board meeting in August. CPD audits were sent out for June 2023 through January of 2024. The pass rate stands at 66%. However, it is worth noting that 18% of the audits are pending completion. Out of 183 audits, 98% of licensees successfully submitted their audit documentation. Audits were placed on hold due to Ms. McCochran's departure from the board in early March. Ms. Berteau, who was promoted as of May 1st, will take some training to get new to the position, and we plan to resume audits in August. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your report. Dr. Harb Sheets.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney. I have a question. I was looking, for example, on your chart that is, does it say attachment? It's the chart that shows total numbers selected for audit by month, past, deficient, that one. And I was thinking, some of the rows add up to 100% and some don't. And is that because there's some that are just not classified yet?
Correct. There are some that have been received but have not been, the audit has not been completed.
Okay, so that's why it's not 100%?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board comment for Ms. Whitney? I'd like to open this item up for public comment. If you have a comment for CPD and renewals, please come forward and have a seat. Okay. Make sure you turn on the middle button and pull it towards you when it goes red.
Okay.
Yes.
I believe I read in the bulletin for the Board of Psychology that there was a training for the new the rules for the continued education units. I missed that, so I kind of like learned from my colleague that it's all been reviewed and it's a new rule. But I was wondering if that training is still available online, and we could go back and kind of get the training, the summary. Although I read the instructions, but they can be a little bit confusing. So it would be nice to have that summary again and have a more clear understanding of the requirements.
So there is a recording of that webinar that we did on our board page.
Okay.
You can watch it after the fact for CPD credit too if you couldn't attend in person, so I can show you where that is.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? Thank you, Ms. Whitney.
You're welcome.
Agenda item 13 is the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee report and consideration of committee recommendations. And Dr. Cervantes is the chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tate. Okay, let me get situated. And I see Mr. Polk coming through to get situated. So we're going to start with item 13A. Do you need a moment, Mr. Polk?
No, I'm ready. Thank you.
Okay. So item 13A, legislative proposals. Number 1, SB 1526, Consumer Affairs, Psychological Associates, Business and Professions Code, Section 2913. Change of supervisor fee, Business and Professions Code, Section 2987. Health and Safety Code, 124260. And this begins on page 46 of the combined packet. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Polk.
Thank you, Dr. Cervantes. Board staff submitted a proposal to the Senate Committee in Business and Professions and Economic Development for technical non-substantive changes to be included in the committee's omnibus bill. The proposal included amendments to Business and Professions Code 2913, 2987, Health and Safety Code 124260. Amendment to the Business Professions Code 2987 is regarding the $25 fee associated with the request to change supervisor for psychological testing technicians, as the $25 fee was intermittently removed from Business and Professions Code 2987 when Senate Bill 816 was passed last year. And this proposal would just add the $25 fee back into the bill language. The amendment to Business Professions Code 2913 addresses current language related to the requirements of a foreign master's degree and the advancement to candidacy, as the current language has created confusion not only to applicants seeking registration, but also to the licensing staff who is processing applications. And the amendment would just clarify the language for both staff and for applicants. On March 1st, the proposed language for Business Professions Code 2913 was amended, and the amendment and the proposal was approved by the board. The amended language was submitted to the Senate Business Professions consultants to be included into the proposal. The last amendment was to Health and Safety Code 124260 to update the language as the code referenced outdated registration categories for registered psychologist and psychological assistant. On March 18th, Senate Bill 1526 was introduced by the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. The language currently includes the proposed amendments to Health and Safety Code 124260, and however, at this time, the other proposed amendments have not been included in the bill language. Board staff has been in contact with the committee consultants regarding the other two proposals, and the consultants have advised that the other proposals are still being reviewed for consideration for SB 1526. Also, in the discussions with the committee consultant, it was found that other business and professions codes and health and safety codes also included the outdated registration categories. Board staff advised the proposed changes will need to apply to those sections as well. And at this time, board staff is continuing to monitor SB 1526 and the other proposed amendments. On April 17th, Senate Bill 1526 was amended to include health and safety codes 1374.72 and 128454, which updated language to reflect the current registration categories. Support position letters have been submitted to the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committees, as well as the Senate Appropriation Committee. And SB 1526 was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee with the recommendation that the full board just continue to request the Senate Committee to consider the additional changes to Business Professions Code 2913 and 2987 in hopes that the proposed changes will be amended into the bill. And that concludes my report on Senate Bill 1526.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Do I hear a motion to approve the committee recommendation as outlined on page 128 of the combined packet?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers.
It's Dr. Harbsheets.
I'm sorry. Dr. Harbsheets, and it was seconded by Dr. Phillips. Is there any board or staff discussion on this item? Mr. Fu?
Mr. Polk, the analysis that you provided stated that the board believes there will be support from the California Psychological Association for these requested amendments. Are we aware if that support has materialized? And since we have the California Psychological Association here, I would be curious if they're able to speak to this during public comment as well.
If you just grant me one moment, I can check the analysis, the current analysis, to see if there was support that was on file.
Is there any other staff or committee comment? Yes.
Just for the record, I'm going to recuse myself on agenda item 13, 14, and 15.
Thank you, Ms. Nystrom.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open up public comment. Is there public comment on item 13A? A1.
Sorry, I'm checking, but I just wanted Elizabeth Winkleman from the California Psychological Association. I don't believe that we have taken a position on SB 1526, but I'm double checking, so we can perhaps talk later. Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Polk.
Just in reviewing the recent Senate analysis, there has been no support other than the board's support on SB 1526. And also, too, there's been no opposition received either.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, then we're going to close public comment and call for a vote on the motion. The motion is to approve the recommendation from the committee as outlined on page 128 of the combined packet, continuing to pursue these amendments to section 2913 and 2987 of the Business and Professions Code. Go ahead, Ms. Prutel.
Kasuga? Aye. Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harbsheets?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you. Now, the next item is item B, review of bills for active position recommendations to the board. Item B1, and just for purposes of housekeeping, if we're considering a position on any of these bills, then we'll make a motion, and then we'll have public comment on the individual bills. Cool? Okay. Just want to make sure we're all moving together on this one. So item B1 is AB 2270 Mainshine, Healing Arts Continuing Education, Menopausal Mental and Physical Health. This item begins on page 131 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk.
Yes, thank you. On February 8th, AB 2270 was introduced by Assemblymember Mainshine. AB 2270 was introduced to allow medical providers, including psychologists, to have the option to take a course in menopausal mental and physical health as part of the continuing education or professional development requirements, and would be adding Business Professions Code 2914.4. On February 26, AB 22 was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions, and on April 10th, the bill was amended. It would still add Business Professions Code 2914.4, but it would now reads as, in determining its continuing professional development, the board shall consider including a course in menopausal mental or physical health. The new language does not fully make the course a requirement. It just gives the board the option to consider making the course requirement. But this time, board staff is still continuing to monitor AB 2270 for any additional amendments. And AB 2270 passed in the Assembly and has been ordered to the Senate. That was ordered on May 2nd. AB 2270 was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee, and at that time, the committee proposed a recommendation to the full board to take a position of support.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adopt a support position to AB
Move to,
2270? Go ahead.
so I move to, for the board to take a support position in AB 2270.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. I heard a second from Dr. Tate.
Pick someone, yep.
Thank you. So we have a motion to adopt a support position on AB 2270 by Dr. Kasuga and second by Dr. Tate. Is there any any board, I almost said faculty, but I didn't. Comment on this motion?
I have a question.
Sure.
So if we vote to take a support position, are we voting for the board to consider it? Is that all we're voting for, is that the board will have this as a topic of discussion?
We're voting to support the legislation, and then we could decide if we want to consider at a later time. Is how I'm interpreting it. Is that correct?
That's correct. And just a slight modification of that, you're also taking a support position as it's in its current form. So if it changes, that's something that we would also want to be watching, because the support position would have been taken at a certain date, right? And so if subsequent to that date, the language changes, it's a bit of an open question as to whether the board would still support the particular bill.
Okay,
it's
so
something to watch.
if it continues as it is and it passes as it is, then the board would be obligated to consider this as, or as not, there's no obligation, just obligated to consider.
We support it. We're not mandated to have to follow through.
Okay,
That makes sense?
I think so.
I just wanted to provide some context from the committee meeting. So basically, the support means that we are supporting, offering the information about perimenopausal health for as a continuing education. It's not going to be mandated for our licensees, but it's going to be offered as a continuing education. And it basically highlights the need for this for information for providers, including mental health providers that are working with this population. So we just wanted to support the importance of this for the people that are working with this population.
Go ahead, Dr. Phillips.
But it doesn't mandate the continuing education providers to actually provide the course. So it's almost more of a sentiment.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think that's the clarification I needed.
I think it's also kind of like aspirational that like if you have this, then there's going to be more incentive for the continuing education providers to provide this course, and then it will get the ball rolling for our licensees to then have the option to take this. So it's twofold, like aspirational as well.
Okay. Any other comment from the board? Seeing none, then we'll open public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, can we call the roll?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. The next item is item 13B2, AB 2282 by McKinner, Family Reunification Services, and this item begins on page 158 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
On February 8th, AB 2282 was introduced by Assemblymember McKenna. AB 2282 would provide that reunification services do not need to be provided to a parent or guardian when the court finds that the parent or guardian of the child has been convicted of a violent felony against the child. AB 2282 would also limit criminal convictions used to deny reunification services to families. It would amend the law to deny services only to the most serious and violent felons who have endangered children or their families. By expanding the scope of individuals requiring reunification services, this would also impose additional duties on county child welfare departments. On March 4th, AB 2282 was referred to the Assembly Committee on Judiciary and Human Services. On April 9th, the bill passed the Committee on Judiciary, and on April 24th, the bill passed the Committee on Human Services and referred to the Committee on Appropriations. On April 12th, AB 2282 was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee for possible position recommendation. The bill was presented to the committee as the board took interest in reunification services, specifically the use of reunification camps, and supported Senate Bill 331, which passed last year, that established the Safe Child Act, which prohibited a court from ordering family reunification treatments in a custody or visitation dispute. Although though AB 2282 is not specific to the child custody, the bill was still presented for review and consideration. After the presentation, the committee considered the bill. However, it was deemed at that time that the bill may be outside of the board scope, and passed a motion to continue to watch AB 2282 as it makes its way through the legislative process.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any board comment? No. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to item 13B3, AB 2581, Manshine, Healing Arts Continuing Education, Maternal Mental Health. This item begins on page 185 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
Yes, thank you. On February 14th, AB 2581 was introduced by Assemblymember Manshine. This bill is very similar to the other bill that he introduced, which is AB 2270. AB 2258 would allow medical providers, including psychologists, to have the option to take a course in maternal mental health, and it would also add Business Professions Code 2914.4. On March 4th, the bill was referred to the Committee on Business and Professions. Board staff has been in contact with the committee consultants regarding the impact of the bill and possible amendments to the language. After those discussions, the bill was amended on April 10th, and it matched the same amended language as AB 2270. It's just that it reads, in determining its continuing professional development, the board shall consider including a course in maternal mental health. The bill passed in the Assembly and was ordered to the Senate on May 2nd. At this time, board staff is continuing to monitor the bill. When the bill was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee, The committee passed a motion to recommend to the full board a position of support on this bill as well.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Do I hear a motion to adopt a support position for AB 2581?
So moved.
So,
I'll be the second.
okay, so we'll have a motion moved by Dr. Tate and second by Dr. Phillips?
Rogers. Dr. Rogers.
Dr. Rogers, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, Rogers 1, Phillips 2. For the minutes. Is there any board comment? Go ahead, Dr. Kasuga.
I just wanted to highlight again and clarify that this is similar to the other bill, is to highlight the need for this topic for continuing education. So there's going to be more continuing education offered with regards to this important mental health population, and for both highlighting and aspirational reasons, I think that we should support this bill.
Thank you. Seeing no other board comment, we'll open public comment on this item. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, can you call the roll, Ms. Pruto?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Briscotte.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4, AB 2703, Aguiar Curry, Federally Qualified Health Centers and Rural Health Clinics, Psychological Associates. This item begins on page 210 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
On February 14th, AB 2703 was introduced by Assemblymember Aguilar Curry. AB 2703 would amend the current law to allow psychological associates to perform services in fairly qualified health centers and rural health centers, and allow the centers to be reimbursed for the services. As the existing law does not specifically allow these centers to be reimbursed for services provided by psychological associates, and by allowing psychological associates to perform services in these centers, it is felt that there would be a greater access to care. On March 4th, the bill was referred to the Assembly on committee. On April 3rd, the bill passed the Committee on Health and was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which the committee referred to the suspense file. On April 12th, AB 2703 was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee for possible position recommendation, and the committee recommendation to the board is to take a support position on AB 2703.
Thank you. So on this bill, or on this item, do I hear a motion to adopt a support position to AB 2703?
I move that the board take a support position on AB 2703.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
I'll second that.
Second by Dr. Tate. Is there any other board comment on this item? We did speak a little bit about it at our last board meeting. Any board comment? No, we're good? Okay. Let's open public comment. Go ahead, Dr.
Hi,
Winkleman.
Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman, again from the California Psychological Association. I wanted to again thank the board for considering support of this bill. This bill is co-sponsored by California Psychological Association and the California Primary Care Association, and it's an important bill in that it would both increase access to care in these community health settings, FQHCs and RHCs, and it would also increase access for training slots for psychological associates who can gain experience in providing healthcare in these mental health care in these settings. So thanks for your consideration, and hope you will support the bill.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Davis.
Dr. Andrea Davis, I'm a member of the California Psychological Association and chair-elect of Division 1 of the California Psychological Association, wanting to say me too, I agree, and I was able to attend the CPA Lobby Day and hear from a number of psychologists their stories about trying to hire psychologists or psych associates into these Medicaid facilities that serve at least over half of the children and many, many of the adults in California, and unable to do so because they cannot be reimbursed for services. Currently, they were left out of the law, which allowed our associates in social work, our associates in marriage and family therapy to be reimbursed. So this is just fixing a little glitch in the law. So we are in strong support. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Go ahead, Dr. Kasuga.
Yeah, in terms of like I think that like I've been with the committee for a while now, and I just wanted to bring some of the information from the rich discussion that we had on the committee into the whole board. And when we are considering our recommendations for a support position, we're thinking about it twofold. One is with regards the training and how it's proactive when it comes to consumer protection for us to support increasing training opportunities. And then the other one is when we think about rural areas in California and consumer protection, the lack of access really is harming those communities. And so looking at our consumer protection lens, access to mental health services is something that we are looking at when considering a support position for these bills that are put in front of us. So that's kind of like the thinking with regards to our consumer protection and the supporting bills such as this.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. Any other board comment? Let's go ahead and call the roll on this motion to support AB 2703.
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harp Sheets?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Briscotte?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you. The next item, number 5, AB 2862, Gibson licenses African American applicants. This item begins on page 236 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
Thank you. On February 15th, Assembly Bill 2862 was introduced by Assemblymember Gibson. AB 2862 would require various business and professions boards, including Healing Arts boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs, to prioritize African American applicants seeking licensure, especially applicants who are descended from a person who was enslaved in the U.S. On March 11th, the bill was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions and the Committee on Judiciary. The bill passed both committees and then was referred to the Appropriations Committee. On April 12th, the bill was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee for possible position recommendation, the committee determining that the board should continue to watch AB 2862 for additional amendments as the bill continues in the legislative process. On April 17th, AB 2862 was amended to include that the provision, if passed, would remain in effect until January 1st of 2029. However, no further amendments regarding the required documentation or further requirements were included in the most recent amendments. And at this time, board staff is continuing to monitor AB 2862.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any board or staff comment on this item? No? Go ahead, Dr. Rogers.
I was just curious if we have any data on the percentage of applications that do come in from African American applicants.
Well, my understanding on that item is that we don't collect race data at the time of application.
Okay, I was just curious, just wondering how this particular bill might impact staff when it comes to prioritizing these applications. So, Thank you.
If I understand correctly, we're legally prohibited from gathering race data. Also, I would mention that one of the problems with the bill is there's no operationalization of it. So it's really hard to understand how you're going to identify, for instance, if somebody descended from, are we going to ask people to present their genealogies? I mean, so hopefully that will get clarified in the legislative process.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. That's really helpful because I couldn't recall if that was part of the application process that you had to include that. So I appreciate the clarification.
Just to add a quick bit of context, right now we have, for example, an expedite for military individuals. So what we ask for is some kind of documentation of proof of active service. So it's something that we can build into the BREEZE system when we're collecting the application data. So that is one of the challenges with this bill is the check boxes that we would have to put in the system at the time of application.
Thank you. Any other board comment?
I was just curious, like, what does it mean to prioritize those applications? Like, do they get extra help, or like what? What does it mean to prioritize? Like, do they?
They
is
go
there
to the front of the line.
Just to front. That's it. Okay. So it's not like they get extra help or anything.
No, like, so a
No.
military application comes in and it goes to the front of the line.
Okay.
And Ms. Chung is here.
Just be ready.
Oh,
if you
okay.
need more elaboration.
Okay, does that need further explanation or we're good? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, then we'll move to the next item. Item number 6 is SB 1012, Wiener, the Regulated Psychedelic Assisted Therapy Act and the Regulated Psychedelic Substance Control Act. And this item begins on page 248 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk.
Thank you. On February 5th, Senate Bill 1012 was introduced by Senator Wiener. On February 14th, SB 1012 was referred to the Senate Committees on Business Professions and Economic Development and Public Safety. Senate Bill 1012 would enact the Regulated Psychedelic Assisted Therapy Act, which would establish the Board of Regulated Psychedelic Facilitators within the Department of Consumer Affairs to license and regulate psychedelic assisted therapy facilitators. The new board would be required to establish education, training, and other qualifications and requirements for obtaining a license as a regulated psychedelic assisted therapy facilitator, and would require the board to be appointed by April 1st of 2025 and begin accepting license applications by April 1st of 2026. This bill would also create an expert oversight committee of 14 members to advise the division and the new board on the development of standards and regulations that include best practices and guidelines that protect public health and safety. In the recent amendments, it was included that at least one member shall have expertise in mental or behavioral health. The new board would consist of 9 members, with at least one member having experience as a facilitator as part of a United States Food and Drug Administration approved clinical trial, a member with expertise in training and supervising facilitators, and at least one member shall be a licensed physician or hold a license with an advanced practice clinician, and at least one member shall have experience providing mental health care to veterans, and one member shall have be a licensed marriage or family therapist, a licensed social worker, or a board-certified chaplain. The bill outlines the requirements for a regulated psychedelic facilitator, which would be anyone 21 years of age or older who has a completed curriculum in regulated psychedelic facilitation and related subject in the hours that would be established by the board that incorporates appropriate school assessment and student knowledge and skills. Prior experience will also be accepted by the board as an equivalent to the required curriculum or practicum requirement, including existing licensure in a health or mental health profession, and any practicum experience that is required by the board. And the individual must pass a regulated psychedelic facilitator competency assessment exam that recognizes principles and standards and that is created or administered by the board or an entity designated by the new board. On April 16th, Senate Bill 1012 passed the Committee on Business and Professions and Economic Development, and then was referred to the Committee on Public Safety. On April 24th, SB 1012 passed the committees and was referred to the Appropriations Committee. Board staff is continuing to monitor SB 1012. SB 1012 was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee for possible position recommendation. The committee expressed at that time concerns regarding the language and how the board, licensees, and the profession would apply to the new registration category or board practice of psychedelic assisted therapy. And at that time, the board has recommended to the full board a opposed position on Senate Bill 1012.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Do I hear a motion to adopt an opposed position?
I move that we
SB?
take an opposed position on SB 1012.
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Harpsheet, second by Dr. Kasuga. Is there any board or staff comment? Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
Thank you, Dr. Cervantes. I'm curious as to the committee's discussion with regard to the concerns and if those concerns have been shared with the author's office in an unofficial manner in terms of any conversations that the author has been doing on stakeholder engagement.
We have not been in contact with the author's office at this time. I think we were waiting to have the board take a position before we reached out with our concerns and our position.
And are there other boards that are considering or have already taken a position since the publication of the BMP NED's analyses?
Last time I reviewed any analysis, I did not see any boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs that took any position on it at this time.
Boards that typically would share our concerns with related to this type of bill?
Most likely, yes.
Are we aware of if their legislative committees have discussed it? I'm thinking about behavioral sciences and the medical board. I'm just curious.
Not that I know of.
Understood. I would be curious if there's the committee's discussion as to the oppose unless amended position, so that you're able to transmit your concerns to the author's office, or if the committee was more, these concerns are opposition, period, and not really concerns because you're just opposed, which is legitimate, but I'm hearing their concerns, but I'm not understanding if those concerns have been transmitted or been discussed with others.
The concerns are pretty global.
Yeah.
We just don't think that this is a particularly good idea to create kind of quasi-mental health clinicians who are going to be administering psychedelics to California consumers, particularly in light of the fact that the research so far is not definitive. We're relatively early on, I think, in the research phase. So this seems premature, and the method by which the services be delivered are concerning. I would think that someone would need a medical license or at least be a nurse practitioner to be administering drugs to people. So I think it's a popular concept in popular culture, but I think in terms of consumer protection, this is a very ill-considered legislative initiative.
Just to add to that, the goals of psychedelic assisted therapy are tied to psychological goals of psychological services, basically alleviating anxiety, working with people that have PTSD, possibly, right? And those they said that, like, for for those types of mental health treatment, according to the bill, they're gonna require license, but we're not really involved in that process. Potentially, there is one mental health person on the advisory committee for the board, but it could be someone from BBS. We may not be involved in it. So there's just a lot of things that could be infringing on our scope and our ability to oversee, and there's, or be able to do our mandate for consumer protection for individuals that are availing psychological services through this. So there's just a lot of concern with regards that portion where we'll be unable to do our mandate if there is this other provider of psychological services that may not include our feedback or our board's involvement in a consulting manner as well. And also the implementation. So like if you are, for instance, a licensee who wants to provide a service, so are you then gonna be required to have two licenses, a license from our board and a license from this board in order to administer this as part of your PTSD treatment? So it's kind of like all of that has, there's really nothing that is in front of us to even like comment like an opposed unless amended type of position, because none of that is even laid out. It's very broad as of the moment.
I concur. Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
Thank you for that. And I'm curious, in your discussions, what did what was the position of the state boards in Oregon and Colorado with regard to their efforts? Because as the analysis noted, the state of Oregon created this through Measure 109, and Colorado has approved it through Prop 122. And I'm curious if we've had conversations with those jurisdictions about how their board reacted to the creation of these regulatory bodies, and what were some of the lessons learned from these efforts?
I just wanted to add that during our committee meeting, there was a public comment from someone who is a licensee in both, I think, Oregon and California, and they said that it might be helpful for us to look at what happened in Oregon, because apparently there are some problems that surfaced. And I think the public comment was from someone that used to be part of the board, and it was I think mentioned that it was hastily adopted. So the public comment just like mentioned that we should look into that jurisdiction as other jurisdictions as well for the same, I think, a suggestion you're asking.
And in light of that public comment, has follow-up been done with regard to that public comment?
At this time, no, I have not reached out to the Oregon district for information at this time. But I do remember that comment, and it is up for consideration. And once this meeting is adjourned, I will reach out to not only the auditor's office, but also Oregon to get more information to help draft and the opposition letter.
And to the extent which Colorado is, I don't know where they are in their process. I know it's just been a year and a half or so since then. They might not be ready, but I would just be curious to understanding more, since there have been states that already are exploring this issue and might have some lessons learned with regard to how perhaps our board should be approaching this issue as well.
One thing I will mention is that the research shows that for a certain portion of the population that has these targeted conditions and disorders, that actually the use of psychedelics has worsened their condition rather than improved it. It's a portion of the population. to have a 21-year-old with we don't know what education doing therapy with somebody that really probably needs a very thorough evaluation before they even consider administering psychedelics, I think is dangerous. I will also add anecdotally from my own practice that some of my patients have elected on their own to go get psychedelic-assisted therapy. And in almost every instance, they've received no therapy, they've received psychedelics. And in some instances, they're asked how high they want to get. There are, in Los Angeles at least, there are internists, OBGYNs, there's any number of doctors that are kind of willy-nilly doing psychedelic-assisted therapy, which really doesn't constitute therapy. So I think, in my own personal opinion, we need to slow our roll and figure out where the research leads, and then act based on the research as to what's in the best interests of California consumers, rather than kind of jumping on this bandwagon, because I think that's what's happened a lot. It's just a cultural issue that's picked up a lot of momentum, and it's therefore reflected in the legislation.
Is there any other board comment? Then we'll open public comment. Go ahead, Dr. Winkleman.
Thank you. I actually had a comment and a question. The comment is, of course, that there are many psychologists who are interested in working in this area, and then there are many psychologists who have concerns about it, similar to what Dr. Phillips has just mentioned. My question is, and I think this distinguishes potentially why the Board of Psychology may have more concerns than some other professional boards, and perhaps Mr. Polk, you can clarify. There are specific other professions that will have representatives under this bill. I think you mentioned physicians, LMFTs, but psychologists, as of now, have no official guaranteed role. So I think that puts the board in a different position, and that to the extent that anything would go forward, that it would be important to specifically have a licensed psychologist involved in the development. And Mr. Polk, can you sorry, you were going kind of quickly before. Can you clarify, like, what is it? Is it the positions that are on the board or an advisory group? And is it's correct, right, that there are other professions specifically represented but not psychologists?
Yes, that's correct. So for the advisory board, the recent amendment just included that at least one member of the advisory board may have experience in mental or behavioral health, but the board members of the new regulated board, it doesn't clearly state that. Like I said, it'd be a licensed clinical social worker or board certified chaplain, or has experience in providing mental health to veterans, or having experience in being a facilitator itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm David DeBus. Am I live?
If it's...
All right. Hi, I'm David DeBus. There is some research, and it's mentioned in a very obscure...
Can you lean in a little bit? Yeah.
There's research. It's mentioned in a very obscure place. And if my memory serves, it's in the October-November edition of Monitor on Psychology from the American Psychological Association, and it's buried in that procession of research abstracts, half of it at the bottom of one page and then finished on the top of the other, and it's an assessment of the negative effects reported by more than 200,000 subjects in research on the effects of psychedelics. Now, I shared this with some patients who were outraged that I was passing this article on because they saw many differences among psychedelics that the article failed to mention. Also, I used to be the clinical director of a large therapeutic community for schizophrenia in the 80s, and at least a third of the people there, their gateway was using a psychedelic, and they arrived at their psychosis a lot sooner than otherwise they would have. And that haunts me.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Hold on. If you'd like to make a public comment, we have a chair right here, and then I just have someone else just stepped in. Sure. Okay.
Dr. Andrea Davis, I have a concern, and I'm hoping that we do hear that you decide to oppose, that they haven't made a sufficient case for why we would create a separate board and a separate testing process, which we all know how complicated that is and how much time it's taken to get that right over time with very, very smart people on this board. For every new approach to treatment, it could multiply infinitely the number of boards overseeing treatment of California patients. So I see a real problem with creating a new board for every kind of treatment that might come up in this sort of space. So to me, as a member of the California Psychological Association, I'd be happy if this board took an opposed position.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
I'm on it? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. I have sort of a personal perception of what psychedelics do. And I think we need to know really what happens at the microscopic level in the brain before it gets, this is just a comment that I'm making, because it's going to take a long time to really figure out what chemically happens in our brains when we put those substances in our system. And I have my own reasons for saying that, because I did, and I'm no longer supporting it.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Please take a seat. Thank you.
It's just a comment, sentiment, I would say. I think it would be kind of somewhat ridiculous to include psychologists in these treatments, because when there was a battle of psychologists trying to get into psychopharmacology, there was so much resistance. There's still so much resistance, even though there are programs designed to train. And it also considers supervision from a physician. And the medications that are allowed for psychologists to be prescribed, they are only limited and they are well researched. Whereas in the case of psychedelics, there's not much research, or not as extensive, and there's no supervision being considered, as I understand. So I think there's a lot of contradiction in this potential program. So that was my sentiment about
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you.
I see no other public comment. Is there any other board comment? Go ahead, Dr. Harpsheets.
I think the comment that was just made is so appropriate, that if the state is not willing to authorize psychologists to provide psychotropic prescriptions, this just doesn't make any sense. I mean, beyond, it's scary to me, but still, it's a very interesting comparison.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
Thank you. This was really helpful, and it's, for me, I'm always curious to understand in the public policy making process what we're learning from places that have already done something, and to understand the shortcomings, like that public testimony that you heard in the legislative committee, but also be thoughtful in how we engage with our stakeholders. This is coming from just my own experience as a legislative staffer. I've always appreciated having a heads up about where these are all the issues. Can we address these issues together? And it's more an issue of process and protocol that the legislative calendar doesn't always afford us, and I understand that. And it's something that from a aside from the subject itself, but from just how do you engage with the author's office in a really meaningful way to either have those address concern, or if there is truly no way to address that concern, that's helpful to always understand as well. So thank you for that discussion. It was just really helpful to be able to hear where we are in the process and understand what type of information we're using to learn from other places who are having a good and bad experiences.
Thank you. And I'll just add also to learn from our stakeholders, because they shared plenty during the committee session as well. So our motion is to adopt an opposed position to SB 1012. It was moved by Dr. Harb Sheets and second by Dr. Kasuga. Seeing no other board or public comment, Ms. Preto, can you call the roll?
Kasuga. Aye. Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
No.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. The motion carries. The next item, number 7, is SB 1067 Smallwood Cuevas, Healing Arts Expedited Licensure Process for Medically Underserved Area or Population. This item was in our hand carry items. Go ahead, Mr. Polk.
Thank you. On February 12th, Senate Bill 1067 was introduced by Senator Smallwood Cuevas. Senate Bill 1067 would require each healing arts boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs to develop a process to expedite the licensure process by giving priority to applicants who are seeking licensure if they demonstrate that they intend to practice in a medically undeserved area or serve a medically undeserved population. On February 21st, Senate Bill 1067 was referred to the Senate Committee on Business and Professions and Economic Development. In meeting with the Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Unit, it was brought to our attention that the medical board currently expedites applicants who meet the criteria, as they provided that the definitions are federally defined and that HCI provides a database based on zip code and other information to determine if the applicant will be providing services in those specific areas. They stated they use the Health and Safety Code 128554 definitions. So starting with medically undeserved area, it's defined as a health professional shortage area or an area of the state where unmet priority needs for physicians exist. And Health and Safety Code also defines medically undeserved population as individuals in the Medi-Cal program and uninsured populations. On April 8th, Senate Bill 1067 passed the Committee on Business and Professions and Economic Development and was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which was then placed on a suspense file. On April 12th, the bill was presented to the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee. The committee expressed their concerns regarding the bill language, specifically to the lack of clarification regarding the definition of medically undeserved area or medically undeserved population, and which documentation would be required to show that the applicants meet those criteria. The committee has recommended that the board takes a support if amended position on Senate Bill 1067. Included in the hand carry item is proposed amendments to Senate Bill 1067 that board staff has worked with legal counsel on to draft, and they are presented for your review and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Polk. Do I hear a motion to adopt a support if amended position on SB 1067?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Tate. Okay, sorry, I can't see right. To adopt a supportive amended position on SB 1067, is there any board comment? Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
This is also in similar line with the comments I made on the previous bill, which is with this position, if they don't take our amendments, we remain neutral, correct?
That's correct.
And so what we're trying to address doesn't get addressed, and there's no, for lack of a better word, leverage to move this forward, correct? In other words, like, well, I'm curious a supportive amended position versus an oppose unless amended position in terms of what your desire is to try to actually get something in this bill. Because if I receive a supportive amended letter, it just means that if I don't take it, then you will remain just neutral. And I have a long list of supporters who like the bill as is. Whereas an oppose unless amended position puts me as the one organization opposing this bill, and it seems more an incentive to engage with the board for the amendments to actually be taken. So I'm just curious about, as with the other bill as well, again, that engagement process and just the thinking behind that.
And I just based on the discussion on this bill at the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee, there seemed to be a consensus about a support for this concept. So I think the struggle was, making sure that the language was clarified so we have the documentation that we need, but that the committee felt like this is a worthwhile bill and concept. And so it's always a strategy, right? Do you oppose unless amended and get the amendments you want? But does that mean that you don't like the concept? It's a strategy call, I think, for the policy.
I'm comfortable with a support on this because of the concept. I'm comfortable with that position. Any other board or staff comment? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none,
I have a question.
go ahead, Dr. Kasuga.
Thank you, Dr. Cervantes. I guess I did ask this during the committee meeting, but if we can clarify again, are we able to use the HGI data as well, the same way the medical board is using, in order to identify potential licensees that may be falling under this bill?
I believe so, since the medical board currently is using the HCI database and their information that they're using to determine if the applicant is meeting the criteria for the medically undeserved population or area. And they use the specific definitions in the health and safety codes as well as the HCI information. So I believe we should be able to if this bill passes.
So if we are in support of the concept of this bill, but the concerns are more with regards implementation, how about we do an oppose unless amended, and for them to include specifics with regards implementation and suggest to the authors the HGI data.
Are you proposing?
Do we have a current motion in the book?
We have a motion.
We have a motion on the table, yeah.
Are people willing to withdraw that, or? No. Okay. So I just don't know how to do it procedurally.
We would need another motion. Is that correct, Anthony?
Well, what we have is a first and a second. I'd recommend that we take a vote on that motion. We're always free to have another motion and have that also be seconded if the board so chooses.
Okay. Thank you. So the motion is to adopt a supportive amended to SB 1067. It was moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Tate. The language for the amendments is on page 12 of our hand carry item. go ahead. Are you going to help us, Ms. Whitney, with the vote?
So one quick, I want to make sure we did have public comment before the vote.
Oh, I did ask for public
You did,
comment, and there
okay.
was none.
Okay, thank you.
Is there public comment on this item? We were about to call the roll on that motion. Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
Just a question on the bill language, excuse me, the amendment language, which is do we have a sense of, there have been discussions behind the scenes where the author's office is generally agreeable already to this language, or that this has been raised in some fashion? And so it's a formality to say supportive amended, and we expect that it will be taken, these amendments will be taken.
We haven't communicated to the author's office on this because the board hasn't officially taken a position. If there are very just technical issues that staff may have with the bill, and a committee has reviewed it and considered it, we may relay those just technical, non-substantive changes, but because this is more of a substantive issue, we haven't communicated with the author's office.
Understood. I was just actually going to follow up with that. And then
Sure.
the second piece, which is the board's perspective is that if these amendments are not taken, despite the potential issues with implementation, that you're okay living through those implementation challenges. Is that accurate?
I think if we had implementation concerns, I'm looking at Ms. Tarantes, because we have an ongoing dialogue with the Department of Consumer Affairs, who on the back end provide technical assistance through the legislative process and convey on behalf of the boards if there are issues that has historically happened on other bills. I'm trying to think, there was a recent bill last year where we had some, this was I think it was the bill on not publishing if someone had a gender identification change. So we had some implementation questions and challenges with that bill. And as a department, we worked with the author on some of those technical implementation issues. So if similarly this was an issue, we would work with the department and go through that process.
And does the department do that through regular, is that through regs? Is that correct? Or is that a formal position that the department takes?
Not necessarily. We would work with the legislative and regulatory unit with the department on any kind of implementation concerns we have, especially if it was a breeze issue like this, where we want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place and the questions that we're asking the applicants, so we know how to expedite and how we're defining the verification and documentation before moving it through the process. So that's kind of an ongoing dialogue that we have with the department. So even if we still had concerns, if the language didn't address it, we still have the remainder of this first house to get through that process, and then second house to tie up any loose ends, I think.
So and in the past, have there been instances where the department has issued a formal position on the bill with regard to those implementation challenges?
So that's not something that is shared, but it is something that we do our own analysis. The department provides their own analysis, and that goes through Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, then it goes to the cabinet, and then ultimately it becomes a recommendation to the governor to, sign or veto a bill. So that's part of our dialogue with DCA, and ultimately may get into a recommendation in the final analysis.
So there's a world then that we are supporting this bill if amended, but privately we've conveyed to the governor that we have concerns.
Correct.
And I just wanted to make sure
In a
that I understood.
non-official way.
So the
Yes.
board officially is in support, but the board is unofficially has challenges potentially.
I think it's safe to say there are mechanisms in place to work through any technical kinks in a bill through the existing process with DCA.
A
if that makes
process
sense.
that's very important because as a regulatory body, we deal with this every year through the legislative process.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure I understood that we might potentially have an official and unofficial position. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate that information, Ms. Oreng. Thank you.
Okay, so we have our motion to adopt a support if amended position to SB 1067. Go ahead, Ms. Whitney.
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harbsheets.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Rascate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're moving to the next item, C.
Dr. Cervantes, I'm going to
Yes.
interrupt you. So we're going to take our lunch break now. Is that okay
Oh,
with
okay.
you?
This one's an information item. Could
Do
we
you-
just,
Oh, you want to do it real quick? Okay.
yeah.
Run with it.
And that way we'll start at 14 when we come back? Cool? Okay. Mr. Polk, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this is just an information update on Assembly Bill 2051, which was introduced by Assemblymember Bonta. This is the SIPAC bill. So this bill would make California a compact state under the Psychology Intertraditional Compact to facilitate the practice of telepsychology and the temporary in-person, face-to-face practice of psychology across state lines. On March 1st, AB 2051 was presented to the board, and at the time, the board adopted an opposed position. Opposed letters have been submitted to the members of the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and the Appropriations Committee, and the opposed letters have been submitted to the author's office as well. On April 16th, AB 2051 was heard in the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions, and board staff provided in-person testimony in opposition. On April 17th, the bill was amended to include that the compact would be operative only if the board has voted in favor of joining the compact. On May 1st, the Appropriations Committee referred AB 2051 to the suspense file with a hearing scheduled for May 16th. And board staff is continuing to monitor AB 2051 and will be planning to testify in person at the Appropriations Committee hearing.
Thank you. We adopted a position at our last board meeting. This is just for information. Is there any board or staff comment in addition? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, that concludes item 13 on the agenda. So then when we break, then we'll return to 14.
I love the way your mind thinks. Thank you. So we'll break for a 45-minute lunch. We'll come back at 12:45, and then my goal is to have the meeting concluded by 2 o'clock. So it's aspirational. Thank you.
Kasuga?
Here.
Cervantes?
Here.
Fu?
Here.
Harbsheets?
Here.
Phillips? Nystrom? Here. Rascate?
Here.
Rogers?
Here.
Tate?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a quorum, and we're going to go right back to item 13C.
Oh, we're on 14.
14. A. Thank you. Dr. Cervantes, are you presenting this item?
Yes. Okay, here we go. Item number 14 is review bills for possible action. Item A is AB 1991 Bonta licensee and registration records. And let me see where that starts on our uh-oh, I lost my page number. That's page 400 in our combined packet. Mr. Polk.
Assembly Bill 1991 was introduced by Assemblymember Bonta. The bill was introduced with the language that would require boards that regulate healing arts licensees or registrants to collect workforce data from from their licensees or registrants and would require the demographic workforce survey to be completed at the time of electronic license or registration renewal, and would no longer be optional or give the option to decline to answer. Applicants who fail to complete the survey would be subject to discipline and would not be able to renew their license or registration until the demographic data is provided. On March 11th, Assembly Bill 1991 was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions. On April 12th, 1991 was presented to the Legislative Regulatory Affairs Committee and was advised that further information would be presented to the full board at today's meeting. On April 16th, Assembly Bill 1991 was amended. The language now includes that it would prohibit certain boards from denying renewal if the workforce data was not provided at the time of electronic renewal. However, licensees and registrants could still be disciplined for failing to provide that data at the time of renewal. On April 18th, Assembly Bill 1991 was referred to the Committee on Appropriations. In reviewing the bill text and completing the bill analysis, which is included in the meeting materials, the staff recommendation is the board take an opposed position on Assembly Bill 1991 as there are concerns regarding the bill language, specifically to the new amendments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Polk. Do I hear a motion to adopt an opposed position to AB 1991?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. And was that Dr. Tate?
Yes.
And Dr. Tate for moving and seconding this motion. Is there any board comment on AB 1991? Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
Your favorite board member today for these items. So it's really just a question, which is the I'm curious if the opposition is stemming from the items that we're requesting for the workforce, or it's the disciplining of the licensee themselves. Like, is the discipline action or the lack of renewal of, or the inability to renew your license the main reason for our opposition, or is it that the 16 factors that, the 14 factors that they've enumerated in the bill are also onerous in collection of data in Breeze, and Breeze is challenging. I know it's expensive with Breeze to update it. I'm just really curious about where we are on all of these issues in terms of the source of the opposition.
Mr. Polk, do you want to speak to that staff recommendation?
Sure, that is correct. So with the language in the bill, with the feeling of the licensee or registrant would be now required to complete the workforce data or demographic data and provide that to us, where before it was optional, or they did have the option to decline to answer if they'd like. Taking that option away from licensees or registrants, and with the way the bill was introduced, is that they would not be able to renew unless they were required to provide that workforce data. With the recent amendments, it says certain boards will not be able to deny their registration or license renewal solely if they don't provide the workforce data. But even if they provide it, the bill would still make a requirement to where we would have to then refer them over to enforcement for discipline for failing to provide that data.
Go ahead, Mr. Fu.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cervantes. And if it's the will of the board to oppose the bill, I'm wondering if when the board president signs the letter or writes the letter, if we could just provide 2 to 4 sentences on the board's focus on addressing access and workforce. And the board has been supportive of making sure that we're able to address the workforce shortage in a really meaningful way. I know we talked about it several times in committees. I just think it would be helpful for them to learn about some of the things that the board has done on the workforce side, and that the opposition isn't to the issue itself, but to the implementation. The mechanism, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fu. I concur with Mr. Fu's recommendation on a letter of opposition if the motion passes. Go ahead.
If I can ask Mr. Fu if he is open to reviewing the draft letter before we send it, to make sure that we capture that spirit in our communication.
I'm happy to review that letter, and I look forward to Dr. Tate's article in the newsletter about our workforce issues.
You can count on me.
I don't even need to talk anymore. This is great. You guys are all, this was my plan all along.
Does that conclude our board comment on this item?
I hope so, yes.
Let's open public comment. This is on AB 1991. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please. Ms. Pruitt.
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom is recusing? Correct, okay. Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you. Item number 15, legislative items for future meeting. The committee may discuss other items of legislation in sufficient detail to determine whether such items should be on a future committee or board meeting agenda, and/or whether to hold a special meeting of the committee or board to discuss such items pursuant to Government Section Code 11125.4. Is there any comment from the board or staff on item number 15? Seeing none, we'll open public comment. Go ahead, Ms. Dr.
Hi.
Winkleman.
Elizabeth Winkleman again from California Psychological Association. I would ask that the board consider taking a position on SB 1451. SB 1451 would expand the restrictions on the use of the term doctor and the use of DR, the term DR period. California Psychological Association has taken an oppose unless amended position. We would like to see it clarified that psychologists can use the term doctor when it is not done so in a misleading way that would indicate that the holder of that the psychologist is a physician. So please consider that for your to add to your bills to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Davis?
Thank you. I would concur with that request. I also have been looking at a set of bills that are before the legislature, which would all address the issue of patient access to care. So I would recommend the committee and all the hard work that you've already done to consider adding to your consideration AB 236 Holden that looks at the accuracy of provider directories, which is a severe problem when patients are looking for covered care. They spend hours, weeks, months sometimes trying to find someone who's accurately open and available. Unfortunately, the provider network adequacy is suffering, and this would help at least for patients to find care. SB 1120 Becker, having to do with the review of claims by AI, at least could it be overseen by somebody in a healthcare, with a licensed healthcare provider, and we've asked for an amendment that claims that are being overviewed and reviewed and denied for mental health and behavioral health and psychological diagnoses would be the person responsible for that AI algorithm would be a licensed psychologist or other healthcare provider who's familiar and trained in behavioral health diagnoses. SB 999, which is also supported by the California Psychological Association. I'm on the local advocacy network of the CPA. Would look again at this issue, same issue of claims review, claims denials being carried out not by somebody in a different healthcare profession, like a nurse reviewing claims for somebody in substance abuse, inpatient treatment, that sort of thing. And then SB 294, Senator Wiener's a very important legislation about children's mental health claims, denials, and the fact that there's a terrible disparity, racial disparity in who accesses the appeals process in California, and that this would send the denials straight to an appeal very often denials are overturned at appeal. So this would help families who are stressed, who don't have access to information about how to appeal their children's behavioral health, mental health denials. So all four are very important for patient access to psychological care. So I ask the committee to take on a few more tasks in looking at those and to support those bills along with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we will move to item number 16 on the agenda. This is the regulatory update, review, and consideration of additional changes. Mr. Polk, let's start with item 8.
Thank you. Item A is referring to the board's regulatory package for inactive psychological associate registration and reactivating a psychological associate registration. The regulatory package was approved for publishing by Office of Administrative Law. The 45-day public comment period started on April 5th and will be completed on May 21st of 2024. On April 22nd, the board did receive a public comment regarding the inactive regulation package. A copy of the comment is included in the hand carry item. The comment was on the 72-month time limit and the pausing of that time limit when an active registration is placed on inactive status. In working with the board's regulation council, it was found that the concerns provided in the comment are addressed in great detail in the regulatory package document, specifically the initial statement of reason document, where the document goes into detail regarding the 72-month limit and the impact the inactive status has on the time limit itself. During our discussions, Reg Council and I agreed that the comment does not warrant a change to the proposed text or warrant a hearing. However, the comment and information wanted to be presented to the board for any further discussion if deemed necessary. The comment and response will be included in the package documents as the comment period comes to a close.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any board or staff comment on this item? No. Seeing none, then we'll continue with the rest of this item for information. Mr. Polk?
For the other regulatory package that are included in the memo, this is just current status of each regulatory package. Right now, the disciplinary guidelines regulatory package is moving forward. The initial statement of reason is currently under Reg Council review. From there, it will be presented to the budget office for review and then get the initial package submitted.
Okay. So what item did you get to?
I apologize. So in this case, we would be on item 16F, the EHLP 2 package.
Okay. So is there any board discussion on this item? 16F? Do we want to make a motion?
I apologize. The last item before we get to the EHLP is the item E. That's just an informational item on the regulatory packages up to the corporations package. There is item to be presented on item 16F for the EHLP 2 reg package. If you'd like, I can go into that now.
Yes,
Okay.
let's do that.
Okay. On May 19th, 2023, the board approved the statutory and regulatory changes to implement the EHLP Part 2 skills exam effective January 1st of 2026. Included in the meeting materials are drafted new licensure forms for the EHLP Part 1, the complete EHLP Part 2, and the request for licensure form. The new drafted forms are in part with the new requirements that were outlined and passed in Assembly Bill 282 that was passed last year. Board staff worked in collaboration with the licensing manager, central services manager, and legal counsel to draft the forms and are presented for the board's review. Along with the creation or the drafting of the new licensures form, there was discussions of updating the regulatory language, specifically to the California Code Regulations 1388. The proposed changes to this language was to clarify the requirements of supervised professional experience hours related to the ECCP Part 2 exam and for exam and licensure. The new proposed change is included in the meeting materials as well. The proposed change is to update the supervisor hours regarding the ECCP2 as before the language referenced 1,500 hours needed to take the ECCP2. However, in reviewing the language, there wasn't a clarifying section that clearly stated of when the full 3,000 hours would have been required for licensure. So to hopefully make the process a little more streamlined, we proposed the change to make the 1,500 to the full 3,000 hours needed to take the ECCP Part 2. That way it would alleviate any documentation, any type of issues in reviewing the documentation, or if there was an issue with hours at the time of when someone would apply for licensure. So we're hoping by changing the 15 to the 3,000 hours, it would just streamline that process for the applicant.
Giving them the maximum flexibility of when they complete those 3,000 hours.
Yeah, so the 3,000 hours in this case with the pros amendment would just that when they apply for the ECCP Part 2, they would show documentation that the full 3,000 hours has been completed at that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Polk. I just see a little nit. This is on page 425 on the form. The last section says this application is based upon. The second item says a doctorate degree. The word should be doctoral degree. So if someone could just make that edit. It doesn't, I don't think it changes the meaning. I think it's just there's a better word for it, consistent with the third little square there. That's just my 2 cents on that. Do we have a motion to approve the amendment to the regulatory language and draft the application proposed here?
I second.
I saw Mr. Fu's hand up. Did you want to? No?
Yeah, I'll talk after.
Okay, so it's been moved by Dr. Harpsheets and second by Dr. Kasuga. Okay, Mr. Fu.
I think your comment, Dr. Cervantes, the language there is in reference to statute, and statute says doctorate degree, not doctoral degree. So my question would be that if we changed it in our application process that check the box when it's referencing 2914, which says doctorate degree, if there are any issues associated with that.
I mean, if that's the case, then we're already inconsistent because in the next one we use doctoral degree. What do you think, Mr. Payne?
I don't know, Stephanie, you look like you want to say something. So.
I'm available if you need my input.
So I wonder then, if statute, one, just for the record, I had to quickly Google it, it's not memorized, I just wanted to confirm. But I wonder, since 2914 references doctorate degree, then actually the third item is a doctorate degree rather than doctoral, based on what you've just said, Dr. Cervantes, in terms of consistency.
It should be doctoral, but I mean, I guess if that's what the statute says. Right, Mr. Payne?
No, Stephanie, if you want to. I have my thoughts, which is that it should match what the statute says. But Stephanie, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Sure. I believe we have been using doctoral degrees in regulations, but if council believe that we should make consistent, we could make a global change. But I don't think it will impact our process because we understand that it means doctoral degree or a doctorate. So up to the board.
Can we get an opinion?
It sounds like we just want to have one reference, whichever that is. Okay.
It sounds like Ms. Chung was saying you're focusing on the wrong thing, Mr. Fu, was in her most diplomatic possible way, and I will let it go.
What I was going to ask is if our board grammarian has an opinion on the use of doctoral or doctorate.
I am not sure how I got roped into this. But my thought is that it should be consistent with statute, even if there is a grammatical preference.
Yeah, I guess so.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we can just ask that staff just make sure that we're consistent. That doesn't need an amendment to the motion, right? Okay, go ahead, Dr. Harpsheets.
Okay, I have two questions. So, Ms. Chung, we're on that same page where you're asking, I lost it, about have you ever applied to become a registered psychologist? Since we don't have that position anymore, do we need it because you want to look back at their background?
Thank you for the question. Yes. Because there are certain application materials, for example, official transcript, it could be used if they're basing on the same one, and we don't want to add additional costs to them. If we already have those official transcript, so then we can look it up and refer back for them to base their application on that degree, same documentation, because the official transcript's not going to change over time.
And then at the bottom where we say, where we're looking at the doctorate things, and we say, and now I gotta find it, maybe it's the next page, where it says you have to have a doctoral degree in psychology, education, it's basically listing the 2914. But the issue I'm concerned about, I'm trying to find where that is now. Where was that? Where we were looking at doctorate and doctoral. Keep going down.
Yeah.
Now, the key, anyway, the question I have is, when it just says a doctorate in psychology, and we know that in the regulation, it has to have a specialization in clinical, blah, 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 could that be misleading because we sometimes see doctoral degrees in psychology, just general psychology. And then we deal with, okay, but what's the specialization? Does it fit within the regulations? Are you at all concerned that could be misleading?
I see what you're saying. We could definitely make changes to that to mirror the statutory language to clarify that. I think that's a good input.
Yeah, oh good, because I think that would be safe to do.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Dr. Cervantes?
I'm wondering, actually, as we talk about that, if we might take an opportunity to maybe put in parentheses here that it's like what type of degrees. Is that necessary, do you think?
I think we should just use the regulatory language, 2914, because where it says it here, we could just, like you say, in parentheses, list what is specifically in 2914, so there's no confusion.
Yeah.
People don't feel like, well, I have a doctorate in psychology. Why is that not okay?
Or a doctorate.
Oh, right? Doctoral, whatever it is. Yeah, doctoral degree. Yeah, whatever it turns out to be. I think it would be less confusing.
Yeah.
Just to mirror the language of the regulation.
Yeah, we could form it in a way that is more clear. I think what you're trying to get at is like, okay, just list it out, inside of a paragraph. Yeah, we could ask the Office of Publications to help us, what's the best way to present that information the most clear way.
Thank you. Mr. Fu.
The bookworms here in the corner, Dr. Kasuga and I, have identified that both doctoral and doctorate are used interchangeably in statute.
However, if you look at further evaluation of 2914, the one that's on applicants' requirements, which I think is the 2914 section that's applicable to this, uses doctoral. And then it is a different section on guidelines for training where they use doctorate. So I guess we're clear to use doctoral degree because that's the one that's on the 2914 applicants requirement section.
Can I remind the group, we have a motion
Yes.
and a second, and I think we're going a little bit in the weeds. I'm just saying, just a little bit. I appreciate the bookworms, I do.
And really, the point of the discussion has been for consistency and clarifying this section 2914 in this, the applicant is based upon section on the application.
And
So
that's
that just-
page 120 on our big blue book.
Yes, so that just kind of brings up, kind of summarizes our discussion here. Let's open public comment.
Great.
Dr. Winkleman, go ahead.
Thank you. So also, I think you're already planning to correct this, Ms. Chung, but I think that Doctor of Education with specialization in psychology is also qualifying degree. So, so that would need to be, make sure that whatever amendments are made, that it would include that as well, unless it just refers to 2914, which I think would solve the whole problem completely. I had a question, a comment about two different sections. I don't know if we can bring those back up. One is in an amendment to 3181 for the applications. In section D1, it requires for the CPLEE that application hereby incorporates, additional verification of experience incorporated by reference. However, the verification of experience is not actually required for the CPLEE. So I'm wondering if that should be stricken, because the point of streamlining the licensure, and even in the D, it says that the CPLEE can be submitted anytime after completing all required coursework. So it is not required to have the verification of experience. And so I'm suggesting that the board may want to consider deleting D 1381 D2. And then I have one other thing, but I think it might be better to do one at a time, the other issue I want to raise.
Give me 1 second. Is that a question for Mr. Singh, since he's not here with us?
That, maybe if I can take it back to Mr. Singh. Is that, I mean, Dr. Winkleman, I mean, that was what I would think. Are you okay with that?
Well, if you approve, my concern would be that if the board approves this regulatory language as is right now, that could be a problem because it's inconsistent, I believe, with the new rules about people being eligible to take the CPLEE without having completed the experience, the 3,000 hours. So I'm not sure exactly procedurally what would need to be done, but I would be concerned if the board is approving as is a requirement that specifically was removed.
This is, but my understanding is that and I'm not reg counsel, but my understanding is that this is one of the many steps in the process. So my thought would be that this may be something that we can adjust. And that's why I was thinking I'd take it back to Mr. Singh.
That's up to you and the
Right,
board. I'm just
right.
raising the concern that
Right.
I don't think that should be part of the application to take the CPLEE. This is all, and one of the reasons why I'm making a comment is that, CPA had sponsored a bill that was passed previously that did streamline the licensing process, including making people eligible to take the CPLEE after completion of their coursework. So that's one of the reasons why we have a particular concern about this is we want to streamline the licensure process as appropriate. And so it would be, this seems inconsistent. But it's whatever procedure that you and the board wants to do for going forward. It's your discretion and prerogative to how to handle that.
What are you thinking, Mr. Payne?
Ms. Chung, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for the comments. Actually, I think we could potentially take it out because it doesn't impact the process. I think at that time when we were going through this package, we have other thoughts on like the experience because we were kind of providing more thoughts on, oh, when could they submit hours, you know, because at that time the proposed requirement for the experience for the each part 2 is 1,500 at that time, and then we were concerned afterwards. We were concerned about, okay, so how about like if they have other hours that want to be submitted, when could they do that? You know, that's why we kind of make it there as a placeholder at that time. But after more thoughts to it, so that's why staff is recommending requiring the 3,000 hours instead for the EPPP Part 2s to make it very clean for the applicants. So then they know that after I got my when I get my EPPP 2 eligibility, I don't have to worry about hours anymore. As soon as I pass the exam, it would just be the request for initial license, you know, then makes it very like less anxiety provoking to the already an anxious process for them. I think I would think that from a staff standpoint, we could remove that VOE requirement in line 48 and 9. It is at 48 and 49.
You were talking, if I caught that, on the application for the complete, right? At the bottom where they have the 3 check boxes. Were you talking about eliminating those last 2 check boxes?
Oh, actually, you've caught yet another correction. I'm talking, I had just caught that in the section 1381 of the regulations, which is up on the
Oh, I see.
So yeah, the application would need to be consistent because in the regulation, the proposed regulatory language specifically is requesting the VOE on lines 48 and 49 in 1381D, but that's an excellent point, Dr. Herbsheets, that of course then the application itself would also need to be
Eliminate
modified.
those 2 boxes.
And it would save the board staff also work to just have the verification of experience submitted one time. So that's a good point I had not thought about either that Ms. Chung mentioned.
So,
Go ahead.
if I can make a
Yes.
recommendation, can I maybe suggest that we get a friendly amendment to make some of these adjustments prior to a vote?
Okay. That's probably a good idea. Let's see if Dr. Herbsheets and Dr. Kasuga agree. We have a motion to approve the amendment to the regulatory language and draft application that was proposed. And then in addition, or the amendment would be to remove, is it line 48? 48 through 50? Or 48 and 49? Okay.
And then in the application for the complete, the check boxes referring to the requirement of the doctoral degree. There's 2 check boxes.
And then, can you repeat that, Dr. Herbsheets?
Dr. Herbsheets, can you put the mic on, please? Thanks.
So we would be removing lines 48 and 49 in the regulation, and on the complete application, the 2 check boxes addressing the doctoral degree on the complete application.
Removing
The VOE, right, not the doctoral degree.
Ms. Chung, did you?
Yes, I want to add something to that before maybe moving forward with the removing the boxes. Because some applicants, they would have a doctoral degree already, and because they could choose either, like taking it early before their degree conferral, or when they take it, they already have the degree conferred. So we kind of want to retain that options for them.
Oh, yeah, that makes
so
sense
then
because
they
it
can
says check
indicate,
one,
oh,
it says check one only.
Yeah,
So
so it's not
that does
requiring.
give, that does give the impression that you can have one of these three. Yeah,
correct.
that makes good sense, thank you.
Yeah, no
So we can eliminate that amendment.
So, okay, so our only amendment that we're considering is omitting lines 48 and 49
Right,
from the
regulation.
proposed language that's in our board packet. Okay. We have a good motion now?
I wanted to make sure that was a friendly amendment that was accepted, and it sounds like Dr. Harp Sheets and Dr. Kasuga are amenable to that friendly amendment.
Yes.
So that's the motion that we have before us. Is there any other board comment? No, okay.
And-
Is there any, do you have more public
Yeah, I
comment?
had one other
Okay, ahead.
item that I wanted to bring up, and this is on 2 pages down in 1387, under the SPE 1387, section G, so it's on page 4, I guess, 1387, section G, about supervision requirements.
Do you know what line it is?
Yeah, sorry, it is line 180. So I may have missed something, and I'll be glad to be, someone can clarify that for me, but it refers to trainee obtaining a co-supervisor who is a licensed psychologist. And I am not sure where the co-supervisor is defined. Does that mean a person has 2 primary supervisors? And are there any forms required for a co-supervisor? I just was wanting to make sure that that will be clear to applicants, like who qualifies as a co-supervisor and how to document that.
Thank you for the question. That's a good point. Actually, that amendment was made in the pathway, was included in the pathway package. So we will think of strategize how to incorporate that section too, because those language already approved, and that explains what a co-supervisor mean. It is not including language here on this package.
I'm sorry, for clarification, where is that included
Is,
right now?
pa-
I mean, is it in a different regulatory package that has not been adopted yet, or it's already been
Correct.
adopted?
It's not adopted yet, but the board has approved the language, so it's also in queue for us to work on. But yes, thank you for bringing that up, and staff would work to strategize how to make those 2 things, implement at the same time, so it makes it very clear.
Great, thank you very much.
Actually.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other public comment? Okay, should I restate the motion really quick? Oh, okay, sorry about that.
In the middle. Hi, not to belabor the doctorate bit, but as sort of a grammar patrol, from an English grammar perspective, doctoral is an adjective, and doctorate is a noun. So when you say doctoral degree, it's technically redundant. So you can either say a doctoral degree or a doctorate, which implies it is a degree. Make sense?
Yeah, we don't usually use degree with doctorate.
You don't usually agree with doctorate?
We don't usually use degree with doctorate because
Correct.
it's redundant.
Technically, that would be yeah, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? So our motion is to approve the amendment presented to the regulatory language and the draft application, omitting lines 48 and 49. Okay, let's do it. Let's call the vote.
Kasuga,
Aye.
Cervantes. Aye. Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom. Phillips.
Oh, no, yours is too.
It still works.
So was that an aye?
Oh.
Oh.
There we go.
Hey.
And they say I don't know anything about technology. Aye.
Ooh, bated breath. Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
That was dramatic. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This concludes the Legislative and Regulatory Committee report, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Phillips.
Always good to be at the end of the agenda. Thank God I just finished my Red Bull. So we're talking on item number 17, which relates to the Registered Psychoanalyst Committee. And I'll just give a little bit of background, then Troy, you can add in what you'd like. As we remember, research psychoanalysts are now going to come. Oh, did I say registered? I said registered psychoanalyst. Well, anyway, we're talking about research psychoanalysts. They're going to be under our auspices as of January 1st. So, in order for us to have regulations in place, we need to take the most expedited approach to the first set of regulations that we use, which means we've basically taken the medical board's regulations and altered them so that they say Board of Psychology and in some other respects, non-substantive respects, so that we can expedite the process of regulatory approval, because we need to have them fast, and as we all know, the regulatory system grinds slow. Then we are going to be creating amendments to these regulations or additional regulations after we have a meeting of stakeholders, which obviously would include the research psychoanalytic community, so that we can best address the things that we think need to be changed. But at this point, all we're asking you to do is to approve some non-substantive changes to existing regulations that are being transferred over to the board. You have anything to add to that, Mr. Polk?
No.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I second.
Okay. So we have a motion from Mr. Fu and a second from Dr. Rogers. And any board discussion? Wow, this is cool. Okay. Nice surprise. Okay. Is there any public comment? Okay. This is smooth sailing. Okay. Could we call the roll, please? Ms. Berteau, are you here? I'm here, sorry.
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom. Aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
So that concludes item number 17.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. So for the first time ever that I can remember, agenda item 18, we do not have any closed session items, which is incredible. I know, it's kind of a party thing. Which means we can move on to agenda item number 19, which recommendations for agenda items for future board meetings. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. So I'm going to open it up to board members first. Any items that need to be, Mr. Fu.
This is more of a reminder of bringing up the EPPP staff report item at our August meeting. We had made the commitment to do that last year, and I just want to reemphasize that point. Thank you.
You got that one. Any other board suggestions?
I have a question. I have to ask Ms. Chung first. We're going to be discussing an item at the licensure meeting in July. Would that be something we would want on the August board meeting agenda? Do we have to bring it back to the board, or will it be?
If you are referring to the qualification item,
Yes.
no, that would not need to be, because that is individual applications.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure.
Any other board suggestions?
I just
Dr.
wanted to
Kasuga.
bring back our mindfulness activity for the upcoming board meeting.
So popular. Yeah. Ms. Orick?
Really quick, I also wanted to let the board know that I've reached out to HCI about doing another update. Typically in the summertime, we have an update on the health of the Health Professions Education Fund and how that fund is going. And they also released a new data report from the Health Workforce Survey. That's currently optional, but I asked for them to provide an update on that, as well as the health of the fund at our August meeting. So they're in the same travel restriction situation we are, so they will be requesting to attend our board meeting in August. So just an update on that.
Any other board suggestions? Public comment. Does anyone have a suggestion for a future board meeting? Please come forward and have a seat. Okay, I see no movement. Before I adjourn the meeting, I'm going to give Ms. Bruteau a few moments to let everyone know about the CPD credit.
One moment, just one additional item about parking. Some of the people who have parked here, if you give the front desk your phone number, they will put it into the system so that when you check out of the parking lot, it adjusts the rates. I don't know anything other than that, but I would suggest you speak with the front desk on your way out. Regarding CPD, thank you for attending the board meeting today. You will receive 6 CPD hours for your participation under CPD category number 1, attendance at a Board of Psychology meeting. For your records, please note today's date and the name of today's meeting, which is May 10th, 2024 board meeting, and 6 CPD hours for your records. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bruteau, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for coming.